Part 2, 1995 through 1996. Chapter 23. The chapter where Max, Ray, and I drive on icy dirt roads in the middle of nowhere on New Year's Eve, 1995, looking for a gig in a barn we can't seem to find, while I subtly fill you in on a few notable things that happened over the last year as I tell you about our new band. 338 days later. Our cautious wheels rolled slowly over a twisted maze of snow-covered dirt roads. Back in Big Bertha with my two best friends, Ray and Max, and all of our music gear in tow, lost in the dark on the outskirts of Parkland. Way out in the boonies. We had a gig, if we could find it. If we didn't slide off the slick road into a ditch, if we didn't freeze to death after getting stuck in said ditch. And this was not an Elysium gig, mind you. Ray wasn't in that fucking band anymore, remember?
Where are we? Where are we? Oh, where the fuck are we?
Max's jocular voice sang from the back seat. I squeezed the energy of my annoyance into the steering wheel. Maybe this was his way of coping with the distress of our predicament. Maybe he thought he was being cute. Maybe he was just being an annoying asshole. Seriously, though, I think it's time we just say fuck it, turn around, and just focus on getting home alive, Ray said as his hand shot up and slapped the overhead light to again review our handwritten directions. Come on, man, we'll find it, I said, in an attempt to reassure my doubtful amigos. We had to find it. Ella Levinsky was going to be there, and possibly other girls too. Keep the faith. Ray's cynicism was palpable. Faith. Jesus Christ. I have faith. You guys can fucking play without me. Without me. Those words triggered a memory from about 8 months before, the first time Raymond Joseph Durand observed an Elysium performance from his new role as a spectator. Well, I must say, the band sounds a whole lot better without me. I told you so, he had informed me as I loaded my drum set out of the Superdome. Without me. That might have been the precise guilt-ridden moment I knew for sure I would have to start a new band with my then bandless best friend. Ray certainly wasn't seeking any poor me commiseration. Definitely not his style. Nevertheless, I soon enlisted Max's help, and it was out of sheer charity, and plenty of guilt too, that this new band was founded. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we were going to find this inaugural gig. Max ceased his annoying backseat singing in favor of random topics of conversation.
You guys got any New Year's revolutions?
He asked. Resolutions, Ray corrected with a smirk.
What?
Max said back. It's resolutions. New Year's resolutions. Not revolutions, buddy, Ray said.
I know. That's what I said. Resolutions.
Max definitely said revolutions, but I decided to stay out of it. I was just enjoying someone else besides me getting ridiculed for once, however mildly.
I know. How about getting your fucking ears checked and cleaned out? Perfect resolution,
Max said. And I wondered, had it been a good year? Do you guys think it's been a good year? I asked. This question fully roused the sarcastic beast that always stands ready on the tip of Raymond Durand's tongue. Yes, James the philosopher. It's been a great year. A fucking fantastic fucking goddamn year. Sound erupted from Max.
I don't know about you losers, but it's definitely been the best year of my life.
Ray was in rare form. Sarcastic similes started firing out of him. Yes. We know. Max had a great year. He's had more pussy than a cat ranch. His dick's been wetter than a slip and slide. He's been blown more than a fucking flag in a goddamn fan factory. Wow. Look how creative jealousy and resentment can make you. I couldn't blame Ray for his impressive outburst. I'm sure just about everyone who knew Max Hansen was sick of his unbearable braggadocio regarding his triumphant entry into the wide world of sexual intercourse with Becky Joss.
Goddamn straight,
Max replied. There it was again. What about you, James? Ray said, sarcastic, condescending. Well, I haven't gotten laid nearly as much as Cornelius Maximus back there, so I guess it's only been a mediocre year at best.
Max added. And could this be true, and mostly due to the fact that you've remained totally hung up on a certain girl who became unavailable? A particular grunge girl, perchance?
Damn it, Max. He was right, of course, and he knew the truth. I hadn't been laid at all. I still hadn't even been kissed. I remained painfully single, romantically starved, and abhorrently inexperienced, etc., etc. Now 17 years and counting. Maybe, I said.
So, a girl you've got a big crush on started dating someone else a whole fucking goddamn year ago. What's a Biff like you to do?
That's when it hit me. A year? Oh my God. Who apparently doesn't exist. I can't believe it's almost been a fucking year. Not sure, Max. We'll have to wait and see, I said as I pushed the thought away and raced my mind through every reason I could think of why 1995 had been a good year, chock full of milestones and self-improvement, because I had to believe I was making some progress towards my goals. My hair had grown Kurt Cobain long. I was now the proud owner of a decently respectable goatee. I was finally free of the torturous treachery of orthodontistry. I'd gotten serious about working on my biceps and pecs. I read a few psychology books Mr. Hammond had recommended, which I think made me smarter. I got my first car, a 1981 piece of shit Civic hatchback, sardine can gray. I got my first job, minimum wage janitor at my former junior high. Our musical talents had multiplied and flourished. The Parkland town-sponsored teen rock scene had continued to grow and thrive. And my Seattleite brother, Griffin, was reportedly still clean and sober and, most importantly, alive. I had only gotten through voicing about 2.5 of these positives before Ray interrupted me. That's fucking great, James, Ray said as he continued to squint at our treasure map. Take the next left, after whatever this next street is. Hey, would you look at that? Goodyear Drive. What a goddamn coinky-dink. Goodyear? I echoed as my mind drifted again, right back to that wretched thought I was trying to avoid. I can't believe it's almost been a year. And of course, Beauregard had something to say about it.
It really has been almost a year, Biff. A year of pathetic clinging to your pathetic hopes that you'll ever break up with him and be with you. Fucking pathetic. Face it, Ella's relationship with Dennis has become anything but short-lived. And you're never going to get laid. Almost a fucking year, Biff. Almost a fucking year.
Almost a year since he snatched her away from me. Almost a year since the worst day of my life. She was supposed to be mine. Almost a year. Talk about throwing a wrench in spokes. My desire derailed. After Mom found me wandering in the snow, I spent that weekend mostly wallowing in bed, my spirit thrashed, feigning physical sickness so as to not raise any eyebrows regarding my mental health. As soon as the numbness wore off, the self-loathing kicked in. It felt like a breakup, as if we had actually been dating. I took it hard, grieving a girlfriend I never had. Ella Levinsky. The one I wanted had become the one that got away. The girlfriend I never had. Never. Never.
Never take your eyes off the road, Biff! Better watch out for deer around here!
Max's safety tip from Big Bertha's back seat snapped me back to attention. I continued to squeeze her steering wheel and added a bit of teeth grinding for good measure. By the way, by this point, Max called me Biff at least 110% of the time. More on that in a minute. "Goddamn, slow down! That was the turn back there! Pinecone Lane!" Ray half said and half shouted at me. "Shit," I said, as I felt the back of the truck skid to my left, with my back stiffening as I tapped the brakes. "Are you sure? I thought it was Pinewood Lane." "Pretty sure. Guess there's only one way to find out," Ray said, contemptuous.
"Flip a bitch!"
Max sang out. I eased Big Bertha to a stop and got us turned around. Easy does it. "See? Pinewood, I told you," I said as we reapproached the turn. "Yes, wonderful. Very good, James." Raymond raised his voice considerably as he shoved the directions in my face. "Look, right on Pinewood, then left on Pinecone." "All righty then," I sang out as I made our turn. 65 seconds of silence later. Ray slammed his fist down on the armrest. "Shit!" "What now?" I said. "Nothing. I was putting my new strap locks on my bass strap. I'm pretty sure I forgot it in the fucking garage." Yes, bass strap. Keyword, bass. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Raymond Joseph Duran, the bass player, as in electric bass guitar. After departing Elysium, Ray promptly sold his drums back to Irene and went home instead with a brand new, classic cream white 4-string Peavey and a decent-sized amp. Bass is an instrument far better suited to both Raymond's personality and physicality. We might think of the role of a bassist as less demanding and way more in line with the level of effort he was able or willing to invest. "What will you do without your strap?" I asked, my worry forever annoying to him. His reply got louder as the sentence unfolded. "Stop worrying! I'll borrow one from Calvin or Dennis, or I'll sit my ass in a chair, or on some goddamn milk crate, or on my amp. Or, if all else fails, I'll sit fucking Indian style on the goddamn fucking ground." "Fine. Good plan," I said as I glanced back at the clock on Big Bertha's dash. As we continued on Pinewood Lane, only about 5 minutes had passed before the feeling of uncertainty crept in once again.
"We must have passed it by now,"
Max said. Ray looked at the directions one more time, for lack of anything else to do, I suppose. He squinted as he held the paper close to his face. "Fuck!" he shouted. "Some asshole has some fine fucking print on here. It says Pinecone is unmarked." "Unmarked?" I said. "Yes, no street sign, smart guy. It's probably that first left we passed right after we turned. Right where I told you to fucking turn."
"Who doesn't mark their fucking streets?"
Max said.
"Hicks who live in the fucking sticks. That's who,"
Ray blasted back. My own frustration prompted me to add a complaint too. "This is just great. Max finally allows us to book a gig, and we're never going to find the fucking place."
"Hey, we'll find it. Gotta keep the faith, remember?"
Ray said in his most condescending, cartoonish tone. "The bigger question might be, how is Max going to play the drums with a bag over his head?" It's true. Max was at least somewhat ashamed of this new band, as evidenced by the fact that he adamantly refused to let me book us on any of the ongoing and successful town-sponsored concerts. We, therefore, had to wait for an unsanctioned, unadvertised, underground, off-the-cuff, guerrilla-style show such as this to make our grand debut. Yes, Max, believe it or not, was our drummer.
Well, when you suck at playing drums as much as I do, a bag over your head won't make much difference. But don't worry, Ray. I've got it covered. A more functional disguise, that is.
Ray twisted around in his seat.
Oh, yeah? Is that because you're more ashamed of your drumming? Or James's singing?
Better not be singing, Biff. Screaming only. You know our agreement.
I just glared at him from the rearview mirror.
But to answer your question, it's the whole kit and caboodle. It's equal opportunity shame for the whole enterprise.
It's kit and caboodle,
Ray again corrected.
What?
Max said.
Never mind.
I should make it clear that Max really was not a drummer. He didn't even own a drum set. But I guess we could say he could lay down a basic beat. But that was about it. And that was all we needed for a shit show like this, according to him. And with me being the lead screamer, it was clear from the beginning that this new band would be anything but serious. It would, in fact, be a joke, a lark, a laugh, a farce, etc. I just felt immediately grateful to have a Max Hansen-approved opportunity to express myself lyrically in front of audiences, hopefully full of females. This was, indeed, an exciting new venture. And adventure? So far, yes. Thankfully, we were about to, finally, find our gig. Ray cranked down Big Bertha's fogged-over passenger window as a cold blast of air rushed in.
This must be it,
he said as we returned to the first turn-off after Pinewood Lane. That? That looks more like someone's driveway, not a lane worthy of a noble name like Pinecone, I said, cynically.
Well then, fuck it. I guess it's time to go to fuck home.
I braced myself to once again tolerate Ray acting like a bull trapped in a red-painted room.
Check it out,
Max said as he gazed out his window.
Look at all those cars. I bet that's the barn, up on top of that hill.
Okay then. Surprise, surprise, sir-fucking-prise. A barn. A barn. We were looking for a barn. Another damn barn. It was still bound to either be a garage or a barn. And I wondered, did Nirvana ever play shows in barns? If so, hopefully not like this one. Again, way out in the boonies. A good 30 minutes beyond Parkland. That's really out there. Nevertheless, we had found it. Whatever it was going to be. At least it was unlikely any cops would be called due to noise complaints way out here. I sighed and relished the first shred of relief I'd had in the last hour, but it didn't last long. We turned down the steep driveway. I pressed the brakes in the same gentle way I had all night. The unmistakable feeling of losing control of the vehicle then seized me as a force we call panic jammed my foot down hard.
Shit!
I screamed, long and loud, as our beast of a vehicle slid like a twirling donut down the dip in the road and right into the ditch. Chapter 24. The chapter where I get Big Bertha stuck in a icy ditch and we set up our gear to play a show in a freezing barn. 3 seconds later.
Fuck! Now you fucking done it!
Ray screamed.
Real smooth, Biff!
Max said as he picked himself off the floorboards in the back.
Hey, imagine telling this story someday. The band called Biff. We didn't make it to our first gig because our fearless leader, whose name is also Biff,
biffed it on the icy road and we got fucking stuck.
Okay. Brace yourself for this one. Biff. The band called Biff. Max had convinced us, or coerced us, to call this new band by my nickname he was so fond of. Sigh. Big sigh. More on that later. I stepped on Big Bertha's gas pedal as her tires spun. We didn't budge. Ray pulled up his most serious tone, the one that sounds exactly like his father, and gave me pointed instruction.
James, take a breath. Fucking relax. Put it in reverse.
I did what he said.
Good. Now gently. Press on the gas and see if we can get some rocking action happening. Do you know if your mom has any cat litter in here?
Cat litter? I said, confused. Ray sighed and shook his head.
Never mind, dipshit.
Beauregard agreed. My attempts to get us unstuck went on for another minute or so, before the repetitive heel of a palm on my driver's side window assaulted my left eardrum.
Bang, 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 bang.
Must be a drummer.
Hey, Biff dudes. I think you just might be a little stuck here in this frozen-y, watery stuff we call snow.
Elliot Ainsworth, the living, breathing, drumming cartoon character from the Moron Men himself, had just wandered over and was shouting through the glass, wearing cut-off jean shorts, and not much else. Yeah, man, big time, I said as I cranked down the window. Elliot went on in his goofy voice, some kind of bastardized Popeye the Sailor Man impersonation.
Well, blow me down. I would offer to help push you out with my bare hands, but I forgot to eat me spinach today, so I'm afraid I can't be much use to you. My dick is pretty big, though, if that helps with anything.
I averted my eyes as he pointed to his crotch. Well, what can you say in response to all that? Just then their guitarist Calvin appeared out of nowhere. His voice of reason soothed me, as usual.
Hey guys, Dennis isn't here yet, but he's got a tow winch on his big-ass truck. So he should be able to get you out. We can help you carry your gear up the hill to the barn.
Hell of a guy that Calvin dude was. I opened our trunk and began delegating loads of gear. Calvin had one more update for me.
Hey, and guess what else?
What's that? I asked, feigning curiosity. We stood in silence as he stared up at his brain for at least 3 or 4 seconds. I felt my eyebrows rise.
We got our new demo tapes from the dub guys. They turned out pretty awesome. I'll ask Dennis if I can get you a free copy. You know, since you recorded it and all.
Yeah. I had recently spent quite a bit of time at the Morons rehearsal space recording their music, believe it or not. And it was all thanks to my new gainful, Pine Sol-related employment I briefly mentioned before. My 2 Biff bandmates and I had become after-school janitors at our former junior high on the west side of town. $5 an hour ensured I was soon destined to become Irene and Buck's new best customer. It's the dream of all music-writing musicians to have their stuff put to tape in some kind of quality fashion. And so, I purchased a 4-track cassette unit and a collection of microphones, and within a few months, I was on my way to becoming the scene's go-to guy for a cheap demo tape of your band. Biff, in our anti-perfectionistic way, had become the first to slap one together post-haste. After hearing it, the Moron Men became my first paying clients. Dennis had tried to trade me for weed and beer. His half-confused and half-angry look indicated the difficulty he had accepting my no thanks for an answer. In the weeks that followed, he had made it his personal mission to be the first to get me drunk or high. He even tried to trick me into eating a pot brownie. At least the other 2 guys thought it was funny when I frantically spit it out like it was a piece of dung. So, despite this, and dare I say, by this point, The whole moron crew could indeed be counted as my friends. Even Dennis Hernandez. This was true, despite the fact that he was still a pretty weird dude and kind of a dick a lot of the time. And yes, even though the rat bastard was still dating Ella Levinsky now damn near 365 days later. Speaking of Dennis, at this point, I knew him well enough to feel quite certain that he was the kind of guy who wouldn't let anyone have anything for free, no matter who they were. But I didn't want to put Calvin's bandmate down in front of him. Cool, man. I can't wait to see how they look. Yeah. Oh, and if you don't mind, we need you guys to play first tonight. Sounds like it's going to be just you and us. This information was a surprise because Dennis had boasted there would be something like 5 bands on the bill, touting the gathering as some kind of New Year's Eve festival of local punk rockers. I don't know why I bothered even mentioning this, but... Oh, I thought Dennis said there was going to be like 5 bands. Yeah. Familiar Alien bailed, and I tried to get a hold of the Laminated Squirrels to come over at the last minute, but their drummer had to work. We wanted Please Say Thank You to play, but Tina's out of town. I wanted to call Damaged Goods, but I lost their number. Do you know it by chance? Before I could answer, Ray interrupted me with a rudely stated request to help him carry his amp. The next thing I knew, we were trudging up the hill together with it. I slipped to my knees and nearly lost my handle on the bottom of Ray's speaker cabinet. I wasn't concentrating. Too distracted by thoughts of Ella Levinsky, I suppose. More on that in a minute. Damn it! My shout echoed in the forest around us. Get a grip there, Slick! Ray shouted at me. Don't let me down! It's the barn or bust! I winced as the cold bit through my jeans. I jumped back on my feet and gazed up at the imposing pine trees all around us. This vast property was the construction site of a new family home for a casual acquaintance from school. Let's just call him Steve or whatever. The towering house on the hill was monstrous and demanded my curiosity, but we soon understood that no one should even think about going in it for any reason. In fact, we had no business being anywhere on the property at all. Unsupervised, of course. No adult approval had been sought out or secured to lawfully permit our presence on the premises. It will therefore come as no surprise to learn that Dennis Hernandez had organized the whole unorganized thing. Apparently the house and barn were being built simultaneously, but for some reason the barn looked quite a bit closer to completion. The only bright beacon for miles around, it clearly had power, so I cautiously assumed there would also be heat. Please? No question. This barn stood twice as tall and wide as all the others I'd been in lately. I do believe it deserves the designation of a big-ass barn. The moron men had already hooked up their PA. As we approached, I could hear it blasting some kind of hardcore punk band I didn't recognize. Elliot stopped us as we got to the door. Hey guys, just a little FYI for you, in case you didn't know. There are many cultures who worship the divine bovine, that is, sacred cows, and other hallowed barnyard animals. Therefore, before you enter this blessed barn space, I need you to know there are 2 smoking hot chicks standing in there, and I ain't talking about poultry, okay? So, sorry to inform you, but they're spoken for. One of them is my 6-foot-tall supermodel girlfriend, Jessica, and the other is my sister, whose name also happens to be Jessica. Awkward silence reigned as Ray and I gave each other puzzled looks. Don't forget, we were still carrying a big-ass speaker cabinet. Elliot continued. Now, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I don't think my sister is smoking hot. In fact, I'm ignorant about her attractiveness, like all brothers should be when it comes to their sisters. But I have a few trusted compatriots who have informed me she has at least an 8 out of 10. But again, she's spoken for. Therefore, don't get any ideas. Let's just keep it in our pants. Okay, gentlemen? Yeah, sure. Hey, this is kind of fucking heavy, man. I grunted with pain. I was so cold by that point, I almost told him to shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of the way. He let us through in just the nick of time, I suppose. We walked in and set down the speaker. The inside of the barn was ablaze with 2 enormous industrial lighting rigs buzzing overhead. These took a minute for my eyes to adjust to. The brand new structure smelled like a lumberyard with all its fresh-cut 2x4s and plywood. The overall sensory of the place shouted at me, "We shouldn't be here." Or maybe that was just Beauregard. Like we were about to defile something new and pure. Someone else's hard work. Plus, it also smelled like hay? Several stacks of dry alfalfa bales lined the back wall and threatened to make me sneeze. An old chainsaw was propped up on one of the bales. I think it stood out to me because my dad had one exactly like it. Plus, something in that general area reeked of gasoline. Elliot cornered me again. His boundaries for personal space left something to be desired. A fucking breath mint, if nothing else. Hey, you getting a good eyeful there, Mr. Hart Biffers? I swallowed hard as I glanced to my left. There was Jessica and Jessica, just as promised. I was not impressed. 8 out of 10? I don't think so. 6 feet? No way in hell. And I wondered, what was I supposed to say? If my answer was yes, would that offend him? If I said no, would that offend him even more? Yeah. Trying not to, but it's pretty tough, you know?
Heck yeah!
He raised his hand for a double high five. Say, don't you got a little filly? My God, I thought. Just leave me alone and let me get our gear in here before I freeze to death. No, not really, man. I need to get back to our truck to get our gear loaded in. A completely goofy, yet totally serious look stiffened his face.
Silence, mortal!
He shouted. No, yeah, right. Didn't I see you chatting it up with Marissa Buckingham in Demarest's class? He was not incorrect, but not all that correct either. As fate or some other roll of the dice might have it, Marissa Buckingham and I happened to be partnered up on a project in econ class. She was nice. She was cute. And I liked her, for sure. And she had been just one of several new ladies who had recently aided me on my personal mission I had given myself. Talk to girls. Become more comfortable talking to girls. See if you can make them smile. Maybe even make them laugh a little. But do all this with no intention of asking them out. Take the pressure off yourself. Just focus on careful observations of what it is about you that seems to garner their interest. So far, it wasn't my bands or our music. Yeah, I know. What the fuck? That plan, so far, hadn't exactly panned out, much to my utter devastation. It could have gotten me Ella, but no. Ella Levinsky was taken. You see, the painful moment did eventually come when I could no longer deny the bitter fact that Ella Levinsky's relationship with moron Dennis had become anything but short-lived, just as Beauregard recently mentioned. Despite my willingness, I couldn't hold my breath forever. I did allow myself at least 6 months later, to acknowledge the fact that there are other girls in the universe too, even though none of them could ever compare to Ella Levinsky. Obviously. So there had been Marissa Buckingham, and Jill Kendall, and Megan Marcos, and one or two other ladies who I found attractive and tried very hard to fall in love with, at least while I bided my time waiting for Dennis and Ella's entanglement to unravel or otherwise run its course. I had made friends with a few girls, but of course still lacked a true girlfriend. Put another way, and with a bit of assistance from my dictionary, all my quixotic dreams soon slipped into platonic realities. Relegation to the friends zone became a common and ongoing occurrence. A bitter reality I brought upon myself due to deficits in confidence and communication skills. I just couldn't seal the deal. Anyway. Elliot stared at me with his lazy eye. Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot to mention. He had a fucking weird lazy eye. No, Marissa is just a friend. We were just working on a project together.
Dude, you can't be friends with her. She's totally hot.
Once again, he was not incorrect. Well, nevertheless, Elliot, excuse me. I maneuvered past him to finally gain passage and lumbered back over to the far side of the space with my load. I only got about 8 seconds of reprieve before he appeared again with another question.
Hey, Biffy Biffers, do you guys have any snacks in your stuck wagon? As I told you before, I forgot me spinach, and I am, as they say, at least somewhat totally famished.
No, man. Sorry, I said.
Bummer for sure. But no problem, for I know my friend Dennis always carries a box of doggy treats in his cab. Tow truck driver's best friend to deal with all those man's best friends he comes across, you know?
Sure, I said, perplexed. And I wondered. The same thing you're wondering. Was Elliot Ainsworth planning on consuming dog food as soon as it arrived in his bandmate's truck? Apparently. Anyway, I slid down the hill to get another load. 2 more cars pulled in, as I stared in disbelief at the dozen or so vehicles that had already arrived despite the weather conditions and the remote locale. Several trucks, plus a few 2-wheel drive sedans and hatchbacks as well. How the hell did they make it up the driveway without getting stuck? Max and Ray soon bombarded me with similar questions and plenty of grief for somehow getting our 4-wheel drive beast stuck regardless. Big Bertha needs new tires, was my only feeble attempt at an excuse. After multiple trips carrying heavy amps and bulky drums, I couldn't feel my feet, legs, arms, hands, or fingers, and my goatee had mostly turned white with frost. That's when I realized our impromptu venue wasn't feeling all that much warmer as you stood within it. In this barn, electricity was available, but heat, electric or otherwise, was not. At least not in any adequate quantity. Someone had placed 2 tiny space heaters running full blast way over in the corner. Ha, I said in reaction. They weren't going to do jack shit. Then I despaired at the sight of them as a wave of worry hit me. What would Ray and Max think? No one feels like a rock star while jamming on some chords in a heavy winter coat. We looked more like we were about to hit the slopes than the stage. We were going to have to rely on shared body heat from our patrons, if there were to be any willing to stay and endure the Arctic conditions to hear some shitty teenage punk rockers. I started doing math. On a Sunday, I figured there would be 3 bands, so that was at least 9 people, plus about 9 cars in the driveway. So that's got to be at least 20 people, and who knows, and oh well. A warm body is a warm body. I concluded in resignation. Speaking of a warm body, a warm, glorious body. There she was. Ella Levinsky stepped through the barn door. And yes, her entrance had its standard effect on me. There it was again. She rubbed her arms for warmth. Even in her bulky coat, her sex appeal seized every cell of my brain, as always, as usual. I never thought of it before, but surely that magnificent, shimmering hair was retaining more of her body heat than the rest of us inferior-haired mortals. Oh man, Ella Levinsky's body heat? That's fucking hot. Excuse me. I got distracted there. She wore a Soundgarden beanie, black with red stitching. How amazingly cool and totally awesome. This thought was followed by the usual barrage of exclamatory cognitions. She is so fucking hot. 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 Too hot. Ouch. So hot it hurts. You know how it goes. And I wondered, what kick-ass band shirt must she have on under that coat? And just beneath that kick-ass band shirt is her bra. And I bet her bra matches her panties. Ella Levinsky's panties? I bet they're leopard print. Oh my God. What if they're leopard print? Sure, they would match her chain wallet. A sexy leopard print thong. The luckiest piece of skimpy fabric in all of creation. So tightly hugging her glorious, heavenly, perfectly shaved... Sorry, I got distracted again. She waved at me and smiled. Yes, you heard that right. Ella Levinsky, the one and only famed grunge girl herself, waved and smiled at me. Buford Jameson Hart, just as she always did when she saw me, around this time. Then, using her perfectly shaped hips and her perfectly petite legs and her perfectly classic black Chuck Taylors, she sauntered her way over in my direction, obviously eager to converse with me. Perfect. Hey, how's it going? She said, all smiles. And oh, that voice. Ella's sweet, sweet voice. As soft as an angel's, if angels exist, that is. Which would mean that God exists. And I was feeling pretty good about that possibility at that moment, as my eardrums were massaged and massaged by Ella Levinsky's angelic voice, cutting like a heat wave through the frosty air. I hadn't heard it in several weeks, not since before Christmas break. I missed it and longed to hear it and couldn't get enough of it, and I just wished everyone else around us could be miraculously raptured away into dust or whatever, so we could be alone to talk about grunge. Hey, I'm pretty good, was what my mouth said, but we must also consider all that my eyes were conveying. Probably something like, I love you so much, it's fucking crazy, and I want you more than anyone has ever wanted anything in the history of all humankind. How are you? Good. Just trying to stay warm, you know? She continued to rub herself all over. I'm not sure if Dennis really thought this through, you know? Just how cold it might get, she said. Nothing like a mention of Dennis Hernandez to snap me out of my frequent intrusive sexual fantasies about his girlfriend. Plus, an inward smirk was in order, as I noticed my doubt as to whether or not Dennis Hernandez ever thought anything through. Yeah, it's freezing, I agreed. Officially the coldest gig ever. But the whole place should hopefully warm up if we get enough people rocking out in here. Oh, I know, right, she said as she reached out and touched my arm with her gloved hand. That would be nice. Her eyes locked into mine as I braced myself for the shockwave of neurochemical activity I knew would immediately follow. My heart fluttered as my knees threatened to buckle. Seriously, I don't mean that poetically. More medically. Better consult the wheel of emotions. Yep, I was still fucking with that damn thing. Playful, accepted, optimistic, and most of all, aroused. She continued. But either way, racing or not, I'm just really excited to finally see Biff play live after all this time, and those special top secret recordings you let me hear. I swear, for at least 2 or 3 seconds, I forgot who I was and where I was. Things kind of just went blurry around me. What would jolly old Mr. Hammond call it? A blizzard of dopamine, perhaps. A blast of joy. Ho, ho, ho. Focus returned as I stared at Ella's hot breath rising from her vibrant smile. This wasn't the first time she had demonstrated the power to make me forget what I was going to say, among other things. No doubt I was blushing too, as red as my pounding heart for her. My mind went blank as blank as my mind typically goes whenever I try to think of metaphors. Absolutely no thoughts. The silence was threatening to get awkward. Thank you, I managed to say. That means a lot to me. Now she was blushing, and that red heart of mine was... Okay, pause. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like you to meet my good friend from school, Ella Levinsky. I know all this may bring up questions for you. Maybe something like, how the hell and when the fuck did talking to Ella Grunge Girl Levinsky somehow become less terrifying? Or something like that. The answers to that question can be summed up rather quickly in yet another of my unsent thank you letters. Dear Ella, I'm so glad we had art class together last semester. Thank you for enthusiastically inviting me to sit with you. Thank you for all the fun conversations we had as we sketched the hours away. Thank you for laughing at my corny jokes. Thank you for all those times you smiled at me and looked me in the eyes and touched my arm as you giggled. Thank you for listening to those demo tapes of our new band and for giving me positive feedback. Thank you for becoming Biff's #1 fan. That's right, I bestow that honor upon you. Thank you for all the compliments you gave me on my artwork. Thank you for taking all my compliments on yours. Thank you for being such an awesome artist. Thank you for agreeing to let me use your sketch of a guy tripping over a log for our cover art of our new Biff demo tape. Thank you for being so hot and so wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being my friend. Oh, and thanks for that kick-ass mixtape you gave me. I listen to it every day. And I wondered, was Ella Levinsky starting to like me? If so, wow. So there you have it, and damn, what a fool I had been. A fearful, fearful fool to have been so afraid to converse with this incredibly light, fun, and easygoing girl. I'll continue to blame my stupid fight or flight nervous system for that one. And her ridiculous hotness. All that was null and void now. Too bad the damage had already been done. Dennis Hernandez. Nevertheless, what a revelation. a revolution and an evolution. Okay, sorry. I've got to calm down here. Consider this next quote from your protagonist. There's just something about art class that makes it easier to talk to people with breasts and vaginas. Buford Jameson Hart. In case you need any further proof of this fact, note that I even braved mentioning the time I accidentally threw a book at her in the hall before we ever met. She laughed in disbelief, and I was relieved she didn't remember the incident. Only then did I know just how much time I'd wasted worrying. At first I regretted bringing it up, but I was glad I did just because it made her laugh. Laughing seemed to be an aphrodisiac for her. I understand it is for a lot of women. Every chuckle I could invoke from her resulted in those long gazes and flirty eyes, and as we've seen, the occasional playful touch on the arm. I realized I had never made a girl laugh before. Nothing thus far, at that point in my life, had felt so exhilarating. I lived for these moments with her.
All right already. Are you ever going to get back to the barn and continue with the fucking story, Biff? You shitty-ass writer.
Yes, Beauregard. Chill the fuck out. Anyway, as you may recall, Ella Levinsky was telling me how excited she was to see the debut performance of my band, Biff. I looked down at the dirt and hay beneath our feet. Ella picked up the slack of the awkwardness of my intimate appreciation. I'm just glad Max finally agreed to play a show, she added while adjusting her Soundgarden beanie and somehow looking even more ravishing. I know. It took about 8 months of pestering, but he finally gave in, I said. She nodded. It's been a long time coming. Yep, and believe it or not, we almost didn't make it. I attempted to casually note. Oh yeah? Ella said, concerned. Yeah, we got pretty lost, and we totally got stuck at the bottom of the driveway down there. Oh no, I'm sorry. That sucks. I thought maybe that was your Suburban. Dennis should be here pretty soon. I'm sure he can pull you out with his big truck. Yeah, cool. I hope so. Where is he? Still out working? Dennis had somehow purchased an enormous truck and had apparently started some kind of towing business. Good for him, I guess. He had to do something with all his spare time after dropping out of high school. Ella rolled her eyes. No, he drove all the way to Wyoming just to buy a bunch of fireworks he's going to set off here tonight. So hopefully he'll get here soon, but who knows? This sounded exactly like something he would do. I guess you've got to go to your supplier, even if it's a state away. And with that came my standard surge of bewilderment I got every time Ella mentioned some other shitty, wasteful, impractical, immature, or just plain dumb thing he had done either directly to her or without any regard for her. It would have been bad enough if she had ended up with a perfect gentleman who treated her like royalty, but fuck me. Not this guy. Just about anyone but this guy. What a dingus, who, by the way, didn't treat her nearly as well as I would. And I wondered, and wondered, and wondered, and wondered. What does she see in him? This question haunted me and left me in a constant state of consternation, if not baffled with ire. What does he got that I don't?
Maybe a little alpha self-confidence?
Okay, Beauregard. You've got me there. I wasn't sure what to tell her this or any time she voiced frustrations about her boyfriend, which had become a frequent occurrence since we had become better acquainted in art class. I guess that's the kind of shit you have to put up with when you're dating a total dumbass. No. Of course, I didn't say that, but a part of me wanted to. As Ella and I chatted, another young lady entered the barn and sauntered up and tapped her on the shoulder. They exchanged a hello hug, and I could smell the girl's perfume floating on the frosty air. I suppose I preferred it to the competing smell of hay and gasoline, but someone needed to tell her a little goes a long way. Oh, hey, this is James. And James, this is my friend Molly. Hi, what's up? I said while gently squeezing the hand she offered. Oh yeah, we actually had advisement class together last semester, she informed. I felt like I had never seen her before in my life, but what could I say? Oh, cool. Well, nice to know your name then, Molly, I said. I smiled at her to cope with a blast of awkward tension. My eyes naturally drifted back to Ella's face. Her exquisite, porcelain-perfect face. And yes, okay, her nose was kind of big. But I loved it. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I would just give her lots of hot Eskimo kisses. I would describe this Molly girl for you now, but at that moment, my brain failed to record much about her. I got the feeling she wanted to talk to me much more than I wanted to talk to her, as evidenced by some other questions she tried to ask me, but I couldn't hear her due to the noise in the room. She waved me off, and I couldn't understand why I felt noticeably guilty about that. Just kidding. I know why. It was more of my people-pleasing nice guy stuff. Not only was I a nice guy, but my friends had also started accusing me of being in touch with my feminine side. To me, this was a good thing. To them, it was a gay thing. Whatever. I suppose the fact that I had become a fan of Sarah McLachlan and Tori Amos wasn't helping my case. Maybe Mr. Hammond would say I was developing a distorted view of healthy masculinity. Maybe. If so, thanks, Dad. Anyway, sorry, Molly, for not having better ears, I guess. By this point, about 20 bundled up kids had gathered, and yet more seemed to be arriving. The energy of the room, barn, felt restless and anxious. Or maybe that was just me, thanks to my awkward acquaintance making with this Molly chick. Either way, and regardless, it was time for Biff to make our grand debut. Chapter 25. The chapter where our new band Biff plays our first show to a positive response, and Ella Levinsky praises our new band Biff, and the Moron Men play too, and then someone sets the barn on fire, and later Dennis Hernandez makes me do something I really don't want to do. 15 minutes later. We took the stage area. Max opened his bag again and pulled out 3 ski masks, brown, yellow, and green. Here, he said. The functional disguises I mentioned. Shit, piss, and puke. Put these on immediately. They'll keep you warm and, trust me, whatever anonymity we can preserve, it's better this way. For whatever reason, this made sense and seemed like a good idea at that moment. Ray looked like he was biting his tongue, and so he didn't comment. We just both took the masks and put them on. Then, he handed us each one of those classic blue and white, "Hello, my name is" stickers. He had already filled in the names. Each one, in bold black capitals, simply said, Biff. Slap. We put those on too. I tuned up with my new well-designed and reliable Boss brand chromatic tuner and let my guitar ring out with an ear-splitting open D chord. Wow, I thought. I really missed this. Elliot bounded in out of nowhere, as goofy as can be, and chanted, Biff, 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 Biff. As he pumped his fists, others joined in, and soon the whole throng was repeating our name. And my name, I guess. There was probably no more than a dozen kids surrounding us, but the energy and anticipation felt huge. Ella joined in too, while wearing the biggest, most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. And I wondered, does it get any better than this? Thanks, we're Biff, I shouted into the mic. This first song is about our asshole drummer. It's called Cornelius Maximus. More cheers arose as Ray slid into his intro. Max extended his drumsticks like two extra-long middle fingers as I swallowed hard and sucked in the air I was about to need to scream my ass off. This fast and heavy number I indeed wrote about our not-so-anonymous drummer, in jest, of course. The lyrics went something like this. Cornelius Maximus, he found love. Cornelius Maximus, open your heart. Cornelius Maximus, what do you find? Cornelius Maximus. Cornelius Maximus, stubborn Taurus. Cornelius Maximus, son of a bitch. Cornelius Maximus, fucking cock. Cornelius Maximus. I know. Pretty deep stuff. Maybe I was delusional in my conclusion that the crowd was digging us, big time. But that seemed to be the case, and we fed off their energy as they moshed around, slamming into the stacks of hay bales. A feeling of shock hit me. I couldn't believe this positive response we were enjoying right out of the gate. This was supposed to be our shitty joke band. As our opening song came to a crashing conclusion, Elliot got them chanting again as he hoisted my right arm above our heads as if I was Rocky Balboa celebrating my latest pounding. Biff, 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 Biff. I felt my face blush under my brown ski mask at the sight of Ella Levinsky cheering us on and chanting for us like we were the Smashing Pumpkins or something. I could get used to this, I thought, somewhat flabbergasted. Actually, I'm not sure if I flabbergasted, but it's one of my favorite words, and I just wanted to use it again. I also wanted to keep our newfound Biff momentum going, so I rushed us into our next song. The crowd continued to cheer as I introduced Choose Your Beast, our latest song we had literally written the day before. A risky prospect? Not for Biff, Max had assured us. I was starting to see that, feel that. It was starting to feel maybe like armor, in fact. Intriguing. About halfway through the song, I went for the second chorus. Raymond launched into the bridge, and Max, I'm not sure what the hell he thought he was doing. The song fell apart. Uh-oh. The proverbial record scratch. Adrenaline and cortisol. Lesson in Rejection, number 20. Learning to roll with the fuck-ups. Back to that same old feeling of terror. Then I heard it. What would be a life-changing declaration from our drummer, Max.
Damn!
That was a Biff!
He exclaimed. The crowd cheered with approval, a chaotic sound that quickly morphed into more Biff, Biff, Biff chants. At that moment, it hit me. Hard. Nothing less than a revelation and a defining moment. Feeling enlightened, and with a smile on my face, my nerves lifted away, and I heard another shocking declaration, this time coming out of my mouth. We're the band called Biff, and we just fucked up. So, fuck it. More cheers and chanting. But we're gonna try not to fuck this last one up. It's called Screaming Song. More cheers. Screaming Song is a 2-chord composition that consists of strange lyrics about killing spiders and loneliness in the verse, sandwiched between 3 choruses of blood-curdling screams repeated over and over as provided by Raymond Joseph Duran. We're talking impressive screams. Damn impressive screaming. Banshee-level shrieks. Shockingly high-pitched and ear-splitting. Most of all, uncharacteristic of my underpassionate best friend. By the second round, the whole place was screaming along with us as they continued to jump and mosh. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I knew I liked it. Again, I looked over for a visual check-in with Ella. She had taken refuge from the moshing over in the corner, but was still banging her head with the music and smiling, obviously enjoying herself and us. For the moment, the whole world melted away. Then, fuck. Dennis Hernandez appeared out of nowhere like some kind of dirty punk rock ninja. Without warning, he bear-hugged Ella from behind, way too aggressive for a lady, and started dry-humping her leg like some kind of disobedient horny dog. He had done the same thing to me before, too, by the way. As she fought him off, I had to fight off an urge to march up and sledgehammer his stupid face with my right-handed baby blue fender. Instead, I threw myself on the ground and expressed my anger through a raging attempt to tear the strings off my guitar. Sorry, Sally. I could have smashed her to bits right then and there, just like Kurt Cobain, but I had to restrain myself. She remained my only guitar. Still, I had to take it out on something. My face pressed against the plastic pickguard as I tasted dirty metal and screamed into the pickups, sending my distorted voice bouncing just under the audience, returning to their chant, "Biff, Biff, Biff." The song then exploded into a wash of noise, feedback, and shitty drum rolls, also known as the outro. I never felt more like a rock star, in my winter coat or otherwise, in all my life. We killed the amps, and someone faded the punk rock music back up on the PA. I peeled off my ski mask and raced to wrap up my instrument cables like I was stealing them or something. The next thing I knew, Dennis Hernandez was in my face.
Dude, that was fucking rad, bro. Biff is like my new favorite band, man. Seriously.
Cool. Thanks, man, I said, disbelieving.
Nah, we suck. Worst band ever.
Max piped in as he passed by. It was easy to dismiss what Dennis had said as a gross exaggeration. Just Dennis being Dennis in all his dramatic, all-or-nothing, attention-demanding glory. But then, a few random patrons also seemed to be going out of their way to share their kudos and compliments. So, I continued to bask in the audience approval that bounded all around us as I tended to my gear. Maybe there really was something to this whole Biff thing. Yes, I failed to fully realize it at that moment, but later would come to appreciate the fact that we had made mistakes that most bands might implode over. But we had owned them, and they loved us for it. That does take courage, I concluded. People do admire courage, especially female people. We're all so afraid of not measuring up or being judged as incompetent, inept, inferior, inappropriate, and the list goes on. We, the band called Biff, had just embraced all that. We took it on with open arms and wore it on our sleeves like a badge of, again, courage. A fuzzy new awareness came into view as I continued to rush to clean up our gear. Shall we call them revelations? What if Biff could be more than just a name? What if it could be an identity? or a philosophy, or a philosophical identity. There we go. How about that? What if, as the leader of this band, I could embody these ideals? What if I could become immune to all the various flavors of rejection I had been tasting so much of lately? Able to embrace each and every one of them as life experiences that are to be expected, acknowledged, welcomed, integrated, assimilated, learned from, and most of all, again, owned. Unabashedly, unashamedly owned. Mr. Hammond would surely appreciate all those ponderings. In fact, I think I may have just been channeling him there. Hello, my name is Biff, and I am a fuck-up. I felt like shouting it then and there. I make mistakes, frequently. I drop the ball during each and every game I play. I am far from perfect. I am perfection's antithesis. And regardless of all this, I am worthy. I am accepted. I belong. I am loved. I am human. And I'll say it again. I am Biff. I can't say I was fully conscious of all these well-thought-out concepts at that moment, but I think I was feeling it on some level. I never dreamed our from-the-hip joke band could have such a fun and successful first showing. We were flying by the seat of our asses, or however that saying goes. We weren't trying to make it big with this band. That was Elysium's job. Yeah, this other thing was just about pure fun and freedom. And I wondered, as I zipped my poor battered Sally into her gig bag, could Biff be a fun respite from the harsh perfectionism and never-ending disappointment that plagued us in Elysium? Whatever. I might have dismissed it all then and there, but then, Ella. There she was, again. My beloved, powerful, powerfully influential Ella. Wow. Biff, 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 she said with frosty breath, grinning from gorgeous, hair-covered ear to gorgeous, hair-covered ear. I then learned a new fact in life. When Ella Levinsky is verbally praising the inaugural live performance of your band called Biff, she looks exponentially hotter than usual, as if that is even possible. She bats her blue eyes, tilts her pretty head as she bites her glossy lip, and she kind of sways a bit as she twists her hips back and forth with excitement. As she does this, you find it's almost too much pleasure to bear. Plus, your brain then barrages you with a flash show of recent memories from art class with her the semester before. Oh, those sweet memories. Art class memories. They tend to stay with you. All those fun conversations about music and bands you wholeheartedly agree are totally awesome and amazing. That time you playfully debated over who has more band shirts. The day she informed you she had actually seen Nirvana play, and the dozens of jealous questions you then blasted her with, followed by a deep discussion about Kurt and how you each felt when he died. All this and more. That's what happens when Ella Levinsky comments on your band. You guys are so awesome. I'm very impressed. Oh my God, I want to suck that smile off her face, I thought as she went on. Just really good energy, you know? You guys seemed totally comfortable, even though it was just your first show. Thank you, was all I could say through my stupid rosy cheeks. And I wondered, how do girls feel about sheepish gratitude? I feel like you probably told me this before, but I can't remember. How did you guys come up with that band name anyway? My mind flashed back to probably our second or third practice on a cold February day in our music shack, my dad's former tool shed, if you recall. Long story short, Max walked in, having just the night before seen Back to the Future again on cable, and declared that we were going to call our band Biff. He went on and on about how perfect it was and refused to consider my protest and threatened to quit the band right then and there if we were to be called anything else. Before I could even answer Ella's question about our band name, she asked another, much more embarrassing one. And is it true that your real name is Biff?
Yes,
Max shouted as he passed by, overhearing us.
His name is Biff. Biff, Biff, Biffy, Biff, Biff.
God damn it, Max. And while I'm at it, fuck you, I thought, but tried not to show it. Not exactly, but kind of, I guess, I replied. She looked concerned, probably sensing a dip in my energy. I grasped to pick up the slack. My full given name is Buford Jameson Hart. I guess Biff can be kind of a nickname or whatever for Buford. I was about to mention the fact that I've never liked being called Biff, to put it mildly, but her reply made me uncertain if I'd ever say or even think that again. Well, I love it. Biff, you know? It's like you can just be yourself and have fun, like you guys just did. You weren't perfect, but you were awesome. I jumped in. Right. And those two things don't always have to go together. They're not mutually. I squirmed and squinted, my eyes shut while trying to pull the word out of my brain. She saved me. Mutually exclusive, she said while touching my arm again. Absolutely. You can be imperfectly awesome in your biffness. You can mess up sometimes, and we still love you. Right. Thanks. And I love you. My whole body immediately seized with, you guessed it, adrenaline and cortisol. Lesson in Rejection, number 21. Coping with vulnerability from accidentally intimate statements. And I wondered, oh God, did I just offend her or otherwise freak her out? I couldn't believe I had just said. What? A wonderfully, powerfully true statement? I love you, Ella Levinsky? I'm probably making too much of it. She didn't even bat an eye. I like to think she was used to that kind of thing from me. Again, thanks to art class. With all this that had gone on between us, how could I not wonder if she had feelings for me? Romantic feelings, sexual feelings, love feelings. It sure as hell seemed like she liked me. She did like me. No question. But, again, did she like me like that? The mystery continued, I suppose. One thing was for damn sure. If only she didn't have that damn dingus of a boyfriend. She would be all over me. She would be mine. We were made for each other, and the relationship we had finally discovered in art class proved it, at least in my mind. Anyway, and once again, back to our developing relationship at the barn. Ella squinted her eyes and kind of bobbled her head. I don't know, though, about calling you Biff.
Ella Levinsky can call you whatever she wants.
Yes, Beauregard. That's right. Can if you want to, I said. No, I think you're always just going to be James to me. Oh my God, she was killing me in the most blissful way.
Hey, asshole! Stop talking to my girlfriend!
Dennis shouted. He threw his arm around my shoulders and pulled me towards the door. He smelled like a cigarette factory staffed by an army of workers who had run out of deodorant long ago. This was another complaint I'd heard Ella voice about her boyfriend many times. His fucking stench. No use in fighting it. We were taking a walk.
"Hey, buddy,"
he said, his tone now highly menacing.
"I hear you've got a little car trouble out there."
I froze. Yeah, man. Thanks for reminding me. I need to ask you about that. I got our Suburban stuck in the damn ditch at the bottom of the driveway. Do you think you could pull us out with your truck after you guys play? A mischievous grin crept across his face, like the fucking Grinch or something.
"Oh, sure, buddy. No problem. But on one condition,"
he said while drawing in close and lowering his voice. He then got way too close to my ear. I could feel his breath as the hairs on my neck stood on end. Oh God, what on earth is he going to ask me to do?
"If you want me to help you get unstuck, then you have to ask out Ella's friend Molly."
What? I said, shocked. Why?
"Because, man,"
he said with a nudge to my shoulder,
"she's really into you. She actually liked you even before tonight. She's been telling Ella about it for weeks. And now? Shit. I bet she'd take you out to your stuck truck and blow you right this minute if you wanted her to."
I looked over at her. Molly, the girl I had briefly met before the show, and apparently should have been aware of from our common advisement class before. The girl I had barely noticed because Ella Levinsky's sheer beauty had overshadowed her presence. She stood on the other side of the barn, talking with Ella. She glanced over at me ever so briefly, caught my eye, and flashed me a smile. A strange feeling then spread through me. According to the Wheel of Emotions, equal parts excitement, wonder, and trepidation? Okay, that word might be a bit on the strong side, but something like that. You see, my immediate attraction to her was, shall we say, questionable at best, and according to my thesaurus, also dubious, flimsy, insubstantial, nebulous, and shaky. I checked out the merchandise. I took in a long, deep look at her body. I don't know why I feel so guilty writing this, but yes, physical appearance was, not surprisingly, at the top of my list of desired features in any potential partner. And let me just say that I have no doubt that literally millions of men in the world would declare Molly's body shape to be exactly what they like and precisely what they want in a woman. But I knew, right away, that I wasn't one of them. She did not appear to be a key that would fit into my brain's lock. And I know you know what I mean. A disheartening feeling then came, by way of my quick conclusions that few of her overt features immediately grabbed my interest. But still, she's pretty, I told myself, obviously trying to become convinced of something. So, awesome, right? A pretty girl likes me. Okay, yes, but she isn't totally my type, I argued with myself, meaning, of course, that she wasn't Ella. Nope, not Ella. Molly wasn't Ella at all. Her dark Italian hair wasn't nearly as long as Ella's imminent thatch. I always felt Ella was the perfect height for me. This Molly girl was kind of short. Not to mention, it was depressingly unlikely she played bass, and doubtful she had the same great musical tastes. I mean, for the love of whoever, whatever. Ella was wearing a Soundgarden hat. Molly was not. And there was no denying that I didn't feel the same intense, magnetic, insatiable, utterly forcible physical attraction to her. Ugh. This gives you a sense of all I wrestled with, as my cowardly heart attempted to talk my brain out of going forward with it. To Ella, I had and would compare not only Molly, but every girl I was even remotely interested in. I couldn't help it. as we are painfully aware, I made Ella out to be my golden standard for women, carved into every inch of my brain forevermore. But still, and nevertheless, I knew I was sick of being alone and starving for romantic experience. So, I must admit, this did feel like a rare opportunity at the time.
So, what do you say, Biff buddy? Do we have a deal?
Dennis asked after another second or two passed. My brow severely furrowed. I'll have to think about it, I said.
Okay, but just so you know, to call a tow truck way out here this late at night on New Year's Eve, I can't even imagine what that will cost.
Yeah, he wasn't kidding, that manipulative bastard. Let's talk about Dennis's motives. Any guesses? In the time I'd known him, it's clear his focus on self-interest was prime, even far more than most people. I banished any assumptions that he was playing matchmaker based on altruism alone. At some point, he learned of my long-standing hots for his girl. He never confronted me directly about it, but if I had $1 for every passive-aggressive comment he made, well, then I'd be well on my way to affording that damn tow truck. I was sure he wanted to get me paired up with someone, anyone, to nullify whatever threat he felt I posed. Put another way, the way I imagine Mr. Hammond would say it, Dennis Hernandez was insecure. And I wondered, why did Dennis feel he had to embrace such a misfit identity? Why, at times, would he just start humping your leg for that matter? At other times, he would just grab your head and scream in your face,
I fucking love you, man!
Then he'd lock you in a bear hug until you frantically squirmed your way free. I don't think he did most of this boundary breaking to be malicious. It was just his unique way of expressing his friendship and approval of people, and, well, as repulsed as some girls may have been by these behaviors, one can imagine how his confidence, assertiveness, and impassioned approach to friendships may have given him some advantages with the ladies. No doubt about it, Dennis was a bad boy and a rebel. Fuck, no need to remind us. We saw how he acted with the mayor. Still, Dennis, I wanted to believe, wasn't a total narcissistic psychopath monster. All this to say, I did assume that he would pull us out of the ditch, regardless of whether or not I complied with his directive. There was no telling how he might escalate the situation if he didn't get what he wanted. As we've seen, he had a tendency to do that. He would force me to fulfill his request or severely embarrass me trying. If I had to ask Molly out, then I would do it without him figuratively or literally twisting my arm. Anyway, the manic morons, as they called themselves on this particular night, gave a typical performance. It was like seeing a caged animal in heat. They wrapped things up in a wash of ear-splitting chaos about 5 minutes before midnight. Dennis put a cap on it with yet another of his completely random statements.
All right, your local morons, thank you. The show is over, but it's not over yet, because 1995 is about to die, and I'm gonna piss on its grave after I stick my dick in its pudding-filled fuck place.
Say what you want about Dennis Hernandez. The man could turn a phrase. The size of the audience had grown slightly, but they were still under 30 or so. As soon as the music stopped, the place erupted in chatter. Everyone talked so loud, I had to shout to hear my own voice. I suppose the excitement of ringing in the new year was exciting in that context. I noticed Elliot was scurrying around, sticking sparklers in hay bales. After placing a dozen or so, he began handing them out to anyone who would take one. Dennis bounded in from outside and straight back up to the mic for another impassioned public announcement.
Hey, pirate tits and party people with penises both big and small. It's less than 1 motherfucking minute till midnight, and there's gonna be fire in the sky. Get your asses outside right now!
He then led the charge out the stable doors to the nearby array of Roman candles, fountains, and ground sparklers. The countdown began, and half a dozen giddy young men with matches stood at the ready. Dennis had delegated the lighting duties to the lot of them. The clock struck midnight, and 1996 exploded with a shower of chemical reactions of sparks and colorful fire. Cheers erupted. I blew on the annoying little plastic horn someone had handed me. Then, the dread set in. I had been waiting for it to kick in all night. The unfulfilled wish that I had someone to kiss. Just when I thought that feeling couldn't get any worse, I looked over and witnessed the last thing I ever wanted to see. I'll give you one guess, and I'll just let Beauregard tell you.
Dennis Hernandez kissing Ella Levinsky.
He grabbed her face, and it looked like he was trying to suck it off as she squirmed to cope with his passion. I winced as my hand instinctively slapped over my eyes. I closed them as tight as I could. I turned 180 degrees and braved another glance around me. And there was Molly. Elliot was handing her a lit sparkler. She turned to me. Maybe it was her eyes or her smile or her body language or her energy. Something practically begged me to go say hi. Whatever it was, she was laying it on pretty thick. Time seemed to slow down. I noticed I suddenly felt at least a little more attracted to her. For a second, just a second or two, I imagined kissing Molly's lips. What a turnaround, don't you think? Perhaps the most attractive thing about her was just the fact I knew she liked me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, right, Beauregard. The mitigated threat of rejection certainly got my attention. I couldn't deny it. It enticed me. Wow, no gamble there. It's a lock. She will say yes. What would be the harm in getting to know her? None. Sure, she's not as petite as you like, but she's got a nice face. Maybe she does like the pumpkins. Ever think of that? You don't know unless you ask. Elliot handed me a sparkler. He had about 6 of them in his hands. I took it and stared at the light until I sensed someone approaching. My nervous system snapped to attention. I immediately knew who. Happy New Year, Molly said. She smiled with big flirty eyes as I returned the greeting. I love your new band. You guys were totally awesome tonight. I've seen your other band too. I think it's so impressive you play both drums and guitar. And you sing too? She knew just how to butter me up and get my dopamine flowing. Our back and forth rapidly picked up momentum as she continued to shower me with praise and approval. I breathed in her alluring perfume. No choice, really. Plus, I could swear I smelled a campfire burning somewhere. The velvety jacket she wore beckoned me to touch it, and therefore her. That was it. She had me. Then I realized I was going to ask her out. I was actually going to ask a girl out, and she was going to say yes. I was amazed at the ease that had found me. That was different. So, have you seen Ella's band play? I asked. Yeah, please say thank you. They're so awesome. Yeah, totally. What kind of music do you usually listen to? I further pried. Oh, I just like about everything, but my favorite station is 92X, she said. I was hoping to hear something more specific we could build on, but this answer was acceptable. Then it all became crystal clear. I would ask her to get coffee and talk about music. Sure, simple enough. I know, my old standby plan. And there was my confidence. That would work. The invitation queued up in my brain and was ready to launch off my tongue. Then I said it. Hey, maybe we could get some coffee sometime, like over at Grinders, and talk about music and stuff. I was stunned by the power my words seemed to have on her. She looked like a little girl on Christmas morning who just tore open a Barbie dream whatever, which I think she then became self-aware of and attempted to reel in. I'd love that. Do you have a pen? I'll give you my number. Yeah, I think I do, over in the barn in my guitar case. My thoughts and words then trailed off, interrupted by the unexpected sound of my best friend Raymond Duran's terrified shouts behind me.
The fucking barn is on fire! I shit you not!
I looked back to see Ray swatting away a billow of menacing white-hot smoke consuming him. I froze. The fire blazed up really fast. By the time I dashed up to the doorway, at least 3 large cubes of hay flared up and threatened to spread to the virgin plywood walls all around them. My first concern was our music gear, and I envisioned myself dashing in to save my beloved Mustang. I ran in and got blasted by a waft of harsh smoke that threatened to burn my olfactory and steal my vision. Someone threw open a large door I hadn't noticed before. This action sucked out a good portion of the smoke. I then got swept up in a mass collective effort to extinguish the blaze. Someone threw snow as their first instinctively desperate move, and about a dozen other kids joined in. Our frozen hands ached as we all threw snowballs like it was World War III, as if our lives depended on it. And it worked. We all stepped back to survey the smoldering damage. Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. My dad's gonna fucking kill me. I'm dead. I'm fucking dead, you guys. Yeah, that was our host, Steve, or whatever his name was. Elliot placed an arm around his shoulder in an effort to console him. The fire also seemed to have ignited a mass exodus of the majority of the attendees. Hey, that was crazy. Are you okay? Molly said as she found me again, post-chaos. I assured her I was, and she explained that her ride was leaving. She took my hand and closed it over a note with her home phone number. Promise you'll call me, she said, with her big brown eyes and kind of a stern brow. I sensed from her tone of voice this was not a question, but more of a directive. I promise, I said as I waved her adieu. And that, my friends, is how I secured my first real romantic outing with a human female. And I suppose it felt pretty damn good. Chapter 26. The chapter where I tell you all about my new girlfriend, whom I don't really like, but can't break up with, and I tell you all about our new, less than great relationship that was getting really fucking old. 111 days later. April 20th, 1996. I was on a date with Ella. Okay, not really. Unfortunately, her boyfriend, Dennis, and my girlfriend, Molly, were there too. And yes, you heard that right. Girlfriend. Molly Ann Masterson. All 5 feet, 2 inches, and 147 pounds of her. According to her driver's license I once snuck a peek at and felt horribly guilty when she caught me and chastised me for it. I kept my promise. I called her. We went out. We made out. By this point, we were damn near 5 months into our romantic entanglement. But who's counting? Wow, congratulations, James. You're no longer a stranger or a newbie to the ways of the woman, huh? Thanks. I don't want to give away too much too soon here, but don't get too excited for me yet. It might be more accurate to say, congratulations, Biff, because at this point, I felt like a seasoned relationship veteran after riding Molly's rather grisly roller coaster of love. But anyway, or regardless, or whatever, I had never been on a double date before. Where do 4 hungry teenagers go for a quick bite in Parkland? Brownie's Burger Barn. That's where. I know the plethora of barns in our town is starting to get ridiculous. Maybe Parkland really should have been called Barnland. Probably. But this place was a barn in name only. Just your standard retail storefront built for the sole purpose of slinging burgers and other similar greasy delights. This little outing was Ella's idea, which of course was my favorite part about it. I suppose we were all quite hungry. Let's see. Thesaurus says, famished. We were famished as we sat studying our menus, our elbows resting on the red and white checkers beneath. 4 moderately sized TVs played 4 different baseball games around us. Elvis Presley sung on the jukebox, but was no match for the loudness of the sizzling sounds coming from the grill in the back. My mouth watering, my stomach growling. I breathed in the alluring smells of burgers, the same delicious sandwiches I knew Molly wouldn't be partaking in. She was a fucking vegan. Sorry, nothing against vegans, but as you listen on, I hope you'll understand my frustration with her veganism, because she was not just any kind of vegan, but what I have since labeled a caterwauling vegan. Ooh, they have pizza too, she commented. Baby, will you split a pizza with me? Sigh. My heart did whatever your heart does when you're really hungry and you hear really disappointing words. I knew the kind of pizza she'd want to order. Green pepper and olives with no cheese. I hate olives, and I think it's safe to say I love cheese more than life itself. What's the point of pizza without cheese? And what's the point of life without pizza? And the chances of her agreeing to half pepperoni were akin to those of a snowball's chance in hell, or some other similar warm place. Call me a chameleon. When I was with her, for all intents and purposes, I was a vegan too. Ouch! Damn it! One of the cooks screamed from the back. Burned himself, maybe? God, ay caramba. That was Molly. I know she, like everyone else, heard that on The Simpsons, but she also liked to show off her Spanish abilities every single fucking chance she got. Kind of molestia, if you ask me. Oh, and yes, she called me baby, and that pretty much makes me wince too. Sure, whatever sounds good to you, I said with plenty of hesitation born of my resistance to having the meal I was paying for totally ruined.
I'm gonna eat a whole fucking cow,
Dennis announced.
I wonder if they have any who suffered extra for me.
Wow. Really, nervous system? I have to feel even more envy for Dennis fucking Hernandez? Ella elbowed him as her face flushed red. I simultaneously thought, oh shit, for I feared he had just provoked yet another of Molly's thorny tirades against the evils of industrial farming and the virtues of vegetarianism. Don't get me wrong, I agree, factory farming is horrible, but do we have to hear about it every time we sit down to eat? And therein lies her bestowed designation of caterwauling vegan. A quick look at my fat dictionary reveals. Caterwaul. Verb, used without object. 1. To utter long wailing cries, as cats in rutting time. 2. To utter a similar sound, howl or screech. 3. To quarrel like cats. Need I say more? With all due respect to vegans, in my mind, a caterwauling vegan is a vegan who makes it their personal mission in life to make everyone around them feel wrong and guilty for their dietary choices as they go on campaigns to revolutionize everyone's pantry and in the process, ruin everyone's dinner. And of course, people find them completely annoying for it. You can imagine the sheer awkwardness when she'd come to our house for dinner. My dad never said more than 2 words to her, thank God, as he begrudgingly chewed bite after rubbery bite of his portobello steak. That was Molly Masterson, a caterwauling vegan. God bless her. Anyway, I could almost feel her body temperature rising as the energy around us became muy caliente. Oh God, help us. Here we go again. Luckily, Brownie himself, the slovenly proprietor of the burger barn, distracted us.
Hey there, you kids know what you want?
We ordered our tragic cheeseless pizza, despite Molly's suspicion the dough might not be up to her standards, and Dennis and Ella asked for whatever delicious, formally living thing they wanted. I feared we might return to the carnivore conversation, but Ella steered us in another, less stressful direction. She took a sip of water and asked, "How long have you guys been dating now?"
Casi 5 meses.
"Almost 5 months," Molly said as she hooked her arm around me and kissed my cheek.
Gross! PDA!
Dennis said, as I squirmed with the impulse to call him a big fat hypocrite. "Wow, 5 months already?" Ella said.
Yep,
Molly chirped. Yes, chirped as she continued to squeeze her arm around me. "And I remember our first date like it was yesterday." And then, once again, out came the boring story no one really wanted to hear. Molly continued. "It was a chilly afternoon in January. I looked out my window and saw this cute little Honda hatchback pulling up with this totally hot guy driving it." Dennis made a gagging sound as I smiled sheepishly. "And he took me to Grinder's coffee house, and we had some chai, which was just so-so." My sphincter tightened as she reminded me I still couldn't believe that she didn't like Grinder's chai. "And we talked about music and about life and got to know each other and discovered we have a lot in common, and I'm pretty sure it was amor a primera vista, love at first sight." And I wondered, how do you say, "yeah, right," or anything but, in Spanish? I had to actively suppress an eye roll. You guessed it, more abashed grins for me, plus a couple of affirming nods I managed to force out of my neck. She turned her head from Ella and stared right at the side of my reddening face and went on. "And then he took me home, and then—"
What? Oh, don't tell me. I know. You sucked out each other's fillings,
Dennis said. I felt my eyebrows rise. Dennis. Talvez algo así. Maybe something like that, Molly joked.
You're being too quiet, Biff. Better fucking say something. Better make some affirming comment here.
Right, I know, Beauregard. Oh, and I'm pretty sure I was wearing this same shirt on our first date. Molly pointed to her tits to indicate her Hootie and the Blowfish t-shirt. She was correct. She definitely wore that shirt on our first date because I could never forget thinking how much I hate that band. Sometimes I think if I have to hear Hold My Hand one more fucking goddamn time, I might become a little less like the band live and a little more like Suicidal Tendencies. So yeah, I counted that as strike one. And later, she told me she actually likes rap music as well. One of my least favorites. That was strike two. Then she didn't like the chai, and that, strike three, somehow got erased 30 minutes later when she made out with me because that was pretty much a home fucking run. Sorry for all the baseball metaphors. The Rockies, Cubs, Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, and Red Sox were all on the TVs. Despite the negatives about Molly, I will never forget that first kiss. It was my first kiss, after all, seared forever into my memory. Soft and wet, slick and smooth. A new way of knowing someone, experiencing them, so close, so intimate. And damn if she didn't taste good. Plus, do you remember the first time your tongue felt someone else's tongue? Talk about a mind fuck. As it concluded, I opened my eyes to her out-of-focus face. Everything was completely blurry, but sharpened again, and we proceeded to make out for 17 more minutes in my car before saying goodnight. The carnal delights continued to escalate in the weeks following that first date. Her kisses were my weakness. Her lips were goddamn kryptonite. They got my blood running, racing. Each time I'd succumb to being thoroughly blissed out. Dare we conclude I was in love? Maybe. But more accurately, I was probably just enraptured by the neurochemistry of love. Dopamine and oxytocin aplenty. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammond. The honeymoon had officially begun. Finally, it would seem my lifelong prayers had been answered. Someone to love. Someone to love me. Make out with me. I had been validated. A worthwhile human being and such. I had a new identity. Molly's boyfriend. And I was going to be a great one. I must have been absolutely elated, right? Yes. Some of the time at least. To some degree. And my initial tenuous attraction to her strengthened and transmuted in fairly short order. But I can't say that it happened all that naturally. I kinda had to work for it. I had to continuously reconvince myself of my attraction to her and stubbornly focus on the few features I liked, physically and otherwise. So then, is it safe to assume, and fair to say, I had finally gotten over my infatuation with Ella Levinsky? Drum roll, please? Nope. I definitely can't say that. I had to bury her, again, just as I had done when she started dating Dennis. Deeper this time. My desire for her had to be hidden, locked in a safe, quarantined, stifled, suffocated, and sufficiently ushered off to some distant and dormant limbo where it hopefully would slumber. Comatose. Because now we were both unavailable. Her heart had long belonged to another. And now mine did too, I guess. And we were going steady. After only a few romantic outings, I would soon be seen holding Molly's sweaty hand during passing period. Seriously, why was her hand always clammy as fuck? Gross. My frequent companion, just the two of us, providing one another with ample enrichment. We could be found together at lunch, after school, and on the weekends. Many would have labeled us attached at the hip. Ray said we were up each other's asses. And maybe it was true. Like so many couples, I and she got lost in our we, consumed by our love for each other. But of course, no honeymoon, literal or figurative, lasts forever. I clearly remember the day ours ended. Valentine's Day, believe it or not. Molly had gotten her hair cut. Short. Really, really short. Much shorter than mine. I'm talking boy short. And as we know, I am attracted, naturally, to the exact opposite of short. And though I tried valiantly, I failed to conceal my disapproval. My mouth said, "Hey, yeah, it looks great," while my face said something like, "That's the most hideous fucking haircut I've ever seen, and I think you'd actually look better if you were just completely fucking bald." Adrenaline and cortisol. Lesson in Rejection, number 22. How to manage the fear of being rejected because you've inadvertently rejected someone else. Thanks, Molly Masterson. I had never been screamed at by a woman before that day. If I was smart, I would have run the other way and never looked back. But no. I stayed. I groveled. I pleaded. I begged. I reassured her and sought reassurance. Then we made up by way of make-out session once again. I felt like I was kissing another boy. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We just made out constantly. Like, all the time. Most of our evenings were spent rotating tongues in movie theaters or fogging up the windows of my sardine can of a hatchback in vacant parks until the police told us to go home. Not to mention other bodily, sexual experimentation and inaugural intimacies I craved to experience.
Hey, Biff! 15 fucking paragraphs later, nobody gives a shit! You ever gonna get back to the story at the burger barn?
Right, Beauregard. And I believe Dennis was about to ask a completely embarrassing and inappropriate question.
So, are you guys fucking yet?
Ella's face turned red, as did mine, I'm sure, as she jabbed her elbow into him again. Harder. You guys don't have to answer that, she said in earnest. Dennis put his sleazy arm around her and continued doing what he always seemed best at, making people uncomfortable.
Why not? I was just wondering.
He looked me right in the eyes.
You know, me and Ella, we fuck all the time. Like 9 or 10 times a week. And it's so good. You don't know what you're missing, bro.
My jaw clenched as I suppressed a wave of jealous rage. I knew exactly what he was doing, and so did he. 9 or 10 times a week? Ella protested.
Yeah, at least. What? You think it's more than that?
No, it's definitely less. And I don't think these guys want to hear about our sex life, nor do they want to share about theirs. No estima acuado para una conversación en la cena, Molly added, whatever the fuck that meant. I assume this was her attempt to ease the tension. Dennis gave the same smug smile I'd seen him wear many times before at that point. He then stared off in contemplation of something. What a rampant contrarian. He was obviously enjoying himself. Fucking sociopath. I must admit, I got distracted by Ella's use of the phrase sex life. Maybe I was just mesmerized by hearing her say the word sex. It turned me on, and you can probably guess where my mind then drifted, and it was a lot better than imagining them doing it.
I can't believe you two aren't doing it yet. What are you waiting for? I've got a whole case of rubbers if you need some.
Adrenaline and cortisol. Lesson in Rejection, number 23. Dealing with the fear of offending others, even when they are offending you. Thanks, Dennis Hernandez. I noticed my fists tighten into a ball. I wanted to tell him it was none of his goddamn business. And not to mention, we hadn't confirmed or denied anything about his intrusive inquiry, regardless. By the way, the answer was yes and no. It was, unfortunately, quite complicated. We had tried, that is, attempted intercourse, on 2 occasions. Both had been total disasters in their own right. Okay, buckle up. Disaster number 1. On a cool spring evening, only a few weeks before. We found ourselves alone in her dad's house, and he wasn't due home for an hour. Still, it felt rushed, and I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out how to get the damn condom on. The condom! That stupid red condom I bought in the bathroom at the Parkland bowling alley. Don't the manufacturers consider the psychology of color on these things? I guess red is a passion color, but I could have used a cool blue in that moment. And I wondered, did Kurt Cobain ever have problems getting condoms on? Did Kurt Cobain ever have to order a cheeseless pizza because he was dating a caterwauling vegan? Forgive me. I know I should have experimented on my own beforehand, but I didn't. It was my first time using such a device, and you better believe Beauregard had plenty to comment on. That fucker. Then Molly offered me some frustration-fueled constructive criticism of her own, I suppose. Why can't you figure it out? You just roll it on. You don't have to be a genius. It shouldn't be that hard. Yeah, speaking of hard, after she said that, my wang was no longer. Sorry, it's not working. We have to try again another time, I said. What? Why not? Dude, what's your fucking problem? I wasn't sure. Maybe my Catholic guilt? Damn, I should have blamed my Catholic guilt. But honestly, I'm not sure why I'm so ashamed to admit this. Believe it or not, I wasn't ready. It really wasn't my idea for us to do it. Plus, for some reason, it always stung whenever she called me dude. If my penis could have gone the other way into my body, like a frightened turtle, I think it would have. A whole new quality of shame enveloped me. I now assume poor Molly also must have felt rejected and somehow inadequate or unattractive. And I'll admit that at that moment, she was completely unattractive to me. It wasn't her ass that I secretly judged to be too big, or her hair, which was too short, or the fact that she herself was too short. It wasn't her jungle of unkempt pubic hair she apparently had zero interest in trimming, nor was it her fucking gross, sweaty hands. It was just her. Most things about her personality and how she often made me feel. Mainly like shit. Like ashamed and guilty and just plain wrong for just plain being who I am. I just usually felt like I could rarely please her, and with my penchant for people-pleasing, well, you can imagine how that was for me. Anyway, so after I told her it wasn't happening, things got pretty ugly pretty fast. I mean, I know I'm not as pretty as other girls, she mumbled as she stood half naked and stared out the window. Make no mistake, this was a trap. She dangled this comment right in front of my face, so I would fall to my groveling knees and drench her in the reassurance that, no, you're just as beautiful, and even more so, of course, and in fact. And the wave of guilt that statement launched hit me so hard I was temporarily benumbed, and therefore I hesitated. The 3 seconds of silence that followed was interpreted by her to be my total agreement with the comparative statement she had just made.
Get the fuck out!
She screamed. I attempted an apologetic protest. It's a good thing I already had most of my clothes back on. Her pillow, her shoe, her goddamn hair straightener, which she didn't even need anymore anyway, at all. Yeah, have you ever made a woman so mad she threw shit at you?
Out!
She repeated. And I left, with my tail between my ass. Obviously, we made up later, and that's when disaster number 2 occurred. but more on that in a minute. First, I bet you're dying to know how I responded to Dennis. "I think we're good on condoms, but thanks anyway," was all I managed to sheepishly reply. Thank God Brownie broke that awkwardness again as he brought out the milkshakes 3 out of the 4 of us had ordered. "Your food should be out in about 5 minutes. Thanks for your patience," he said with a wink to the ladies.
Perfect, Dennis said. Who wants to get high? We can go toke in my truck and be back in plenty of time to spare.
You might have noticed the date. Dennis smoked daily, whether it was National Cannabis Day or not. By the way, remember back at our first meeting with the mayor when Dennis told him that he was totally clean now after a year in juvie? That might have been less than true.
I know Stella Ella isn't interested, but how about you two squares?
He added.
Shit, I know Biff won't on his life.
Yeah, by this point in my life, I'd declined countless opportunities to partake in a variety of substance use. As I mentioned before, many of them came about courtesy of Dennis Hernandez. It did get easier to say no to him with all the practice he gave me before he eventually gave up. No, Dennis, I would not forget the lessons my brother and Kurt Cobain and countless others had taught me. "I'll take a few tokes," Molly said.
All right, that a girl,
Dennis said while reaching over for a high five.
420, buddy,
he shouted, way too loudly. I looked back at Ella, whose face again flushed. "No thanks, man," I said. "Ella and I will hang here and—" My heart skipped as our eyes met. "Hold down the fort."
Okay,
Dennis said.
But don't make any moves on my girl.
"Hey, same goes for you, man," I replied. Dennis locked eyes with me, then rolled his as he smirked as if to say, "Ha, yeah, right. Fucking asshole." "You guys, come on now. Don't be silly," Molly added. You should have heard the tone in her voice. What the hell was wrong with her? They wandered out the door and around the corner, out of sight. "You know, I've really missed hanging out with you in art class this semester," Ella then said. Her statement came with a stark realization that we were alone together, and I'm pretty sure this was the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me, and the newest, or latest, greatest moment of my life. "I know, me too," I replied. "That was so fun. I hope we'll have some classes together next year." She grinned and nodded. Then we had an instant of silent, intimate eyes and smiles. "So, I know you don't smoke tobacco, and I guess that goes for Mary Jane too?" "Yeah, no, never," I said. "That's cool. Me neither. I mean, I've tried it. Dennis has made me try it, but..." Her face became consumed with kind of a lost look, like she was dissociating from something, some painful or otherwise unwanted memory or reality that she recently lived, remembering all that was surely undesired in her relationship with Dingus. But that's just my view, of course. Hopefully I was wrong. "I might try it someday," I added, but my big brother got into it, and it led him to a lot of other stuff, and basically ruined his life for a while. Plus, I think it just kind of makes you dumb in a way. Yes, absolutely. Dennis can act so dumb when he's high. I wish he would cut back. It really kind of sucks. She stared out the window as her tone dipped into some noticeable despair towards the end of her confession. Like a kid realizing her father wasn't coming home for the daddy-daughter dance. Yet more of Ella Levinsky's voiced frustration with Dennis Hernandez. Recall I mentioned she had some kind of complaint about him every time he came up while we were alone together. You can imagine how that always made me feel. I'd rather get paper cuts on my ball sack. I had to suppress a great urge to grab her by the shoulders and shake her and shout, "Ella, don't you see? You're dating an asshole. So dump the zero and get with the hero. Me." Clearly, I would never actually say that to her, but in my little fantasy, I'd invite her to run away with me and start a new life in some other town. No, I couldn't say that, but I could, and did, use these exchanges for opportunities to take little jabs at Dennis for the sake of comparisons, but only when he wasn't around, of course. I squinted my eyes and rubbed my bearded chin to create a look of wise contemplation. Yeah, I tend to try to do things that make me smarter. That's just smart, right? She just smiled and laughed. Why, yes. How smart of you.
Hey, no one's smarter than me,
Dennis interrupted, sounding as usual like some kind of cartoonish villain as he and Molly sat back down. Wow, that was fast, Ella said. What are you two talking about? Molly asked. Despite the docile gloss in her eyes, her voice remained rife with the same terrified tone I'd tried to describe earlier. Just different ways to stay smart, I said.
Yeah, like never ever use drugs. You should get a job with your buddy the mayor on his Just Say No campaign.
Maybe, I said, if the pay is good.
Nah, there's no way he pays shit for shit. Maybe for you, though, since you're his best buddy and all.
I probably frowned and squirmed and maybe furrowed my brow a bit at this remark. Damn you, Dennis, I thought.
He used to be a cop, you know.
Really? I said.
Yup, a fucking pig. He busted my dad one time. Then he became an asshole judge and busted me. Hey, y'all. Okay, it's supper time. Here you go.
Man, this brownie guy sure had great timing. We must have been hungry because it got pretty quiet. They chomped down their delicious, previously living selections, while I choked down my half of our pitiful excuse for a pizza. This might be a good time to tell you about sex attempt disaster number 2. It was only a week before, and about 3 weeks prior to the first attempt, I had studied up on condom use through a tedious process of trial and error alone in my bedroom with the door double locked. Finally, my number had come up, and I finally felt ready to get my V-card punched. We ran through our typical routine of heavy petting and foreplay. We stripped each other down, and I successfully suited myself up. Much additional awkwardness followed as we worked out the physical mechanics of it all, if you know what I mean. But soon enough, hey, we were doing it, I realized. We were having sex. And it was pretty good. Just pretty good. 10 minutes passed. Then 10 more. That was around the time the questions started. Are you going to come? 2 minutes later. Are you going to finish soon? 2 more minutes later. What's taking so long? Lesson in Rejection, number 24. Coping with rejection over your lack of ejaculation. Thanks, latex. It wasn't going to happen, but I wasn't ready to let myself acknowledge this. Just go already, she said, finally giving in to her frustration. Okay, shout it out with me now. Boner killer. I rolled off of her in resignation. Believe it or not, I couldn't feel anything. Or at least I couldn't feel enough. I remember thinking I might rather be at home alone in my room with a sock, or at least better off in regards to my present goal there. Look, to be clear, I'm not suggesting anybody forego condom use. By all means, be safe, people. Maybe I just got the extra thick kind or some shit. The rubber suit version specifically formulated for extra protection. So that was about as disappointing as, well, as disappointing as having sex for the first time and not being able to finish. Sorry, no comparison there. It was over, and she, not surprisingly, was hurt and felt rejected. Inadequate as a woman, perhaps? Not enough for sure. I tried to explain it away to convince her it was anything but her fault. It's not you. It's the condom, I pleaded. I guess I can't feel enough or something. Not sure if she heard any of it. Unlikely. As I drove home, my hollow heart was devoid of any sense of victory from conquest. Just confusion and disappointment. Wait a minute. And I wondered, if you don't come, then does that count? Put another way, I wasn't sure if I was still a virgin or not. What a goddamn ridiculous thing to wonder as I paid Brownie's bill for my regrettable tragedy of a supposedly vegan pizza. Little did I know, I wouldn't have to worry/wonder about it much longer. Chapter 27. The chapter where I get in a fight with my girlfriend, and we have makeup sex, unprotected, and I conclude I've completely ruined my life. 2 hours later. After dinner, the four of us caught a movie together at Parkland's one and only dinky little theater and called it a night. As our double date unfolded, Molly was obviously struggling with something. I could feel it in her energy and see it in her demeanor. And I wondered, what did Dennis have her smoke? Is there such a thing as bad weed? If so, can it make you act bitchy and distant? Even more bitchy and distant and insecure than usual? I soon discovered my instinct was at least partially right. It had something to do with Dennis. Dennis told me he used to have a big crush on Ella. She finally told me as I drove her home. Okay, is for some reason all I said in response. Well, is it true? Yes. I can't believe you never told me that. She's one of my best friends. Okay. Sorry. I didn't think it mattered. Well, I guess it doesn't, as long as you don't still have a crush on her. A long pause chilled the air as I choked on the lump in my throat. Do you? I froze. Yes. Again, my nervous system's tendency to favor freezing in the face of threats. And Molly did have a tendency to interpret my silence in some tragically unhelpful ways. I guess I probably always went quiet when deciding between a truth and a lie. Here we go again, I thought. 1 agonizing hour later. The lies got a bit easier to tell as our heated convo went on. Hell, by the end of it, I had almost convinced myself I didn't have a crush on Ella anymore. I breathed in a sigh as I squeezed Molly in my arms. The tumult had passed. I had successfully calmed the storm. I closed my tired eyes. They wanted a break from the harsh bare bulb that loomed above our heads in her bedroom. Then everything went dark just after I sensed Molly reach over and flip the switch. I want to have makeup sex with you, she whispered into my right ear as close as conceivable. Right now? I knew her dad was asleep on the couch, but yes, I want you to fuck me right now, without that stupid condom. I felt my frightened turtle of a penis shrink in the spirit of retreat. I don't What are you afraid of?
Getting you fucking pregnant?
A voice inside me screamed. Beauregard? Was that you? Regardless, yes. I was afraid of getting her pregnant, and I think that was a pretty healthy fear. A good portion of my brain was just pulling me towards the door. I just wanted to get the hell away. But then again, sex, sex, sex! If you know what I mean. Wheel of emotions? A variety of various flavors of fear, for sure. And it's not on there for some reason, but sexual arousal is most definitely an emotion. I want your love, not your fear. If you really love me, then you'll put yourself inside me. I want to feel you completely with nothing between us. And I want you to come inside me. For some reason, the instant she said the phrase, come inside me, despite how turtle-like it might have been the moment before, my ever-eager male organ suddenly awoke and decided to betray me.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I'd be happy to come inside you,
it said, and snapped to attention, just in time for her to shut the door and yank my pants down. The next thing I knew, she had me on the bed and properly lubricated. My whole body kind of seized up. I was tense, of course, probably because I felt like I was giving in to Satan or some kind of succubus, signing my soul away. At least half of my nervous system wanted to fight her off or otherwise resist, and the other half was, again, stiff. Then it happened. She slid me into her, and I surrendered. Completely consumed by the greatest, most exhilarating, most pleasurable physical sensation I'd ever felt, as my whole consciousness completely funneled into the space between my legs, temporarily resting in the greatest place in the whole universe. It wasn't specific to Molly, by the way. She just happened to be the vessel providing the experience. Her genitals, that is. Maybe her body is a nicer way to put it. This woman who embodies the divine feminine, whatever that means, and I had merged, become one, in the ecstasy of that wholeness, being temporarily anchored in it, and it was all I ever hoped it would be. Well, basically, generally. Anyway, 2 minutes later, and it was over, and I froze. Chapter 28. The chapter where I ask my girlfriend if she's pregnant, and she gets really pissed at me. 1 week later, April 27th, 1996, Saturday, Rosewood Park. At dusk, our usual hangout spot. A luscious square mile of green grass and cottonwood trees where Molly and I spent a lot of time creating a trove of romantic memories. Whatever. There I sat, in my sardine can on wheels, waiting, like the good boy I was, just as I had been instructed to do. It had pretty much been the worst day of my life. I had let my bandmates down. Way down. Big time. Just an hour before, you would have found me at Buck's recording studio. Yeah, Buck. Irene's husband, you recall. The good-hearted gruff who offers special pricing for all customers under 18. I kept the business card Irene gave me the day Raymond bought his drum set. It had been trapped in my wallet ever since, even after I bought the 4-track recording unit I mentioned. I knew the perfectionism of Elysium would require a far better sounding demo tape than that piece of equipment could yield us. Max, Seamus, and I had saved our pennies for a number of months to buy a recording session in hopes of walking away with an adequately satisfactory 3-song demo. However, the whole experience ended up being nothing but a lesson in rejection, number 25. Managing the guilt and shame of not being able to lay down your drum parts in the recording studio due to the fact that you've barely slept in the past week because you're quite convinced that you've knocked up your horrible, bitchy girlfriend and completely ruined your life. Thanks, shitty situation. Yeah, so my body was there, sitting at my drum set, but my mind was far elsewhere. You can imagine how pissed Max got. Very. And you could probably guess how drunk Seamus became. Quite. Luckily, Buck was running high on compassion that day, even after take 25. His words had continued to echo in my head.
You're all fucked up, guy. That's the problem,
Buck said as he stepped out of the control room.
You got it bad. I bet it's a woman, right? Some girlie's got you all twisted up. You can't play for shit. We've all been there.
Wow, I thought, and said out loud. I was amazed. Wisdom unexpectedly oozed from his pores, just under his Polaroid lenses. He read me like an X-ray. Then he told us we needed more time, and he'd credit us back this lost day if we wanted to come back in a few months. Hopefully by then I'd
have my head on straight.
Thanks, Buck. The session officially ended when Irene called from the top of the stairs, informing us, "There's a call for James from a young lady named Molly." I couldn't believe she had the nerve to bother me at Buck's. I reluctantly took the phone. "Hello?" I said. "Hey, how's it going? Are you guys almost done?" "It's going pretty terribly, actually, but whatever. We're pretty much done. Will you meet me at the park in an hour? I need to talk to you." I froze. Paralyzed and blinded by the fear I had been trying to keep at bay all day. The fear that had all but concluded that I had, for sure, without a doubt, definitely gotten my horrible girlfriend pregnant and completely ruined my life. Anyway, there I was, ready, I suppose, to face my fate. Molly's car then pulled up next to mine, just as the last light of the blazing red sun faded to purple and black over the mountainous horizon. Before I knew it, she had taken her usual spot on my passenger side. Her entrance came with a blast of cool water. She, for some reason, really layered this same perfume she wore on our first date. At least she wasn't wearing that stupid Hootie and the Blowfish shirt. I tried to look her in the eyes, but it was really hard. Maybe that's why she skipped the pleasantries. "You've been acting so weird this week, babe. What's wrong?" she said. "You barely even talked to me at school yesterday." We sat in silence for a bit as I bit my tongue. Then it betrayed me. "Are you pregnant?" "Oh my God, is that what you're so worried about?" "Yes." "Why? Because that would just, totally ruin your life or something?" Yeah, pretty much." "What do you mean? Fuck you." Tears started streaming down her cheeks. Because we're teenagers? We're not ready to have kids? At all? Obviously, right?" My stupid voice squeaked. I was almost shouting. "Yes, I guess it would be too soon." "You guess?" My tone shocked even me. "Hell yeah, it's too soon. Way too soon. Stop yelling," she said, matching my volume. "Fuck this." She opened the door and staggered into the green field, surely expecting me to follow, which I did, immediately. She only got about 10 steps before becoming halted by my pleas. "No, wait, stop. I'm sorry." "For what?" "Sorry I yelled." I was. I knew she was sensitive to people raising their voices. I guess her mom and dad did that a lot in her past. "You should be sorry, and for a lot more than just that." "Fine, I'm sorry for everything then." but I still need to know. I think I deserve to know if you're carrying my child. I don't know. Well, can you get a test? No. That would be so fucking embarrassing. I don't want to go buy a pregnancy test. Fine, then I'll go buy one. No, that's just as embarrassing if anyone sees you. That's ridiculous. No one's going to see me. It's fucking Hills Market. It's impossible not to see someone you know. I turned and stomped back to my car. I'm going to buy one. I need to know right now. No, stop. I'm not pregnant. You're not? No. Are you sure? How do you know? Because I just know, okay? No, that's not okay. How do you know? She paused and seethed. Because I got my period. You're on your period? Yes. And that means you're not pregnant? Yes, Jesus. Don't you know anything? It means I'm definitely not, okay? I froze. In a good way. 25 minutes later. On the drive home, I put the windows down and let the breeze blast me. I wanted to click my heels as I jumped for joy. I felt like I was flying. Elated, weights lifted, lesson learned, disaster averted, bullet dodged, bomb disarmed. Now I could get back to just dealing with the regular challenges our relationship presented me. That was plenty. We parted ways on good terms that night after negotiating future plans for birth control use. But after that particularly gnarly experience, I didn't know what to think. Actually, I knew exactly what I thought, and it was probably the same thing you're thinking right now at this point in the story. But I wasn't quite ready to admit it to myself. If I wasn't so relieved, I might have noticed how mad I was at Molly. Sure, mad at Molly, manipulated by Molly, annoyed with Molly, violated by Molly, betrayed by Molly, resentful of Molly, helpless to deal with Molly, and most of all, trapped with Molly. These common feelings and more came flooding in later, after the euphoria of being off the fatherhood hook started to wear off. Still, I slept like a baby that night. The baby we weren't having. But before I drifted off, I did write yet another of my mental thank you letters. Dear Molly Masterson, if our little lovely relationship is to continue, I'd like to thank you in advance for making the following changes to your behavior. Immediately and forever, please. Thank you for never again imposing your veganism on me. Thank you for seeing a doctor about your chronically, clinically gross, sweaty hands. Thank you for purchasing an electric razor and whacking down the jungle that's between your legs. Thank you for stopping making me feel guilty and wretched about myself on a shockingly consistent basis. Thank you for no longer manipulating and coercing me into doing things I don't want to do, like eating vegan and having unprotected sex just to prove I love you. Thank you for letting your hair grow out a bit longer, for God's sakes. Thank you for hitting the gym a little bit more to tighten up your posterior. Thank you for not listening to rap around me. And if you care, you have the power to do so much to reduce the hootie in my life. Thank you for softening your strong opinions and reducing your demands. And thank you for never again lying to me about knowing whether or not you're pregnant with our potential or unborn child. Who knows how long you might have strung me along there if I didn't call your bluff. How many more days, weeks, or months you might have held this over my head out of your ongoing need to test me or otherwise watch me squirm. Thank you, my dear. Even though this thank you letter went unsent, of course, it did get the ball rolling, in my mind anyway. And I wondered, how do you break up with a girl? And why hadn't Mr. Hammond covered that in psychology class? Yeah, right. This was a question I never thought I would have to ask, a task I never dreamed life would require me to undertake. I was supposed to meet my soulmate right out of the gate, right? It seemed almost as impossible as asking a girl out had felt to me before Molly and I became involved. It had taken me so long to find somebody. Now I was going to send her away? Then what? More years of destitute singleness? I couldn't bear the thought. Actually, I don't think I was thinking clearly about any of this. Various iterations of fear were running the whole show. Nothing but fight, flight, or freeze, as experienced from the not-so-cozy confines between a rock and a hard place. I thought of everyone I might ask for advice, but it just made me feel sick to my stomach. How to end a romance were the key words I soon typed into the search bar at the library. Nothing. I even tried my luck with our school's new internet search thingy. Not shit helpful there either. I would push it all aside for now. I needed to focus on the music anyway. For in just a few weeks, a big Biff gig was coming up. An official Biff gig, to be exact. Chapter 29. The chapter where Dennis Hernandez finally ruins everything for us in regards to our local music scene. 1 week later. May 4th, 1996. I was the first one to arrive at the Superdome on this night. I stood in the quiet dark. I breathed in the now familiar mustiness and felt a kind of reverent gratitude. I lugged my amp straight to the stage because Biff was set to play first. Yes, believe it or not, the band called Biff on the bill at a Parkland Superdome show. And no, Max had not relented his strong preference for Biff never to play a bona fide or otherwise officially sanctioned gig. Again, I can only assume he was completely ashamed of us, as evidenced by multiple fiery refusals to join Biff on stage at the Superdome. As I climbed up on the stage with another load of gear, I remembered his words.
Fuck that! I'm not fucking playing in fucking Biff at a real show!
Or something to that effect. You already know Max always wore the pants in Elysium, but I was the frontman in Biff, our fearless leader, as Raymond often called me, and I really wanted Biff to perform at least one gig that wasn't in some crummy basement, dusty garage, or freezing barn. I grew more frustrated as time went on, and he remained utterly stubborn on this topic. Then, for perhaps the first time in my life, I grew a pair and decided to go against Max's wishes. I booked Biff to play anyway. I guess I forgot to tell him.
What the fuck is this?
He demanded to know when he first saw the flyer posted at school. Yes. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to muster the courage to inform him before we were officially advertising the show. I figured this was the only way he couldn't back out. Nevertheless, I was prepared for an epic argument. Yeah, right. Probably more like a pitiful session of pleading from my best beggar's stance. To my surprise, he didn't put up a fight about it at all. He just stared at it for a second or two and shrugged.
Whatever. Fuck it,
he said. He had yielded. I was shocked, but I should have known better. I should have known Max could only continue in his contrarian ways. I should have known Max would rebel. So then, the big night had arrived, and the three of us stood on stage in front of at least 50 of our peers. Little did Ray and I know, we would be leaving the stage with one less band member than we started with. Let me remind us that Max really was not a drummer. We might call him a stand-in, poser, or imposter. Whatever the case, He had been sticking it out with us, taking time to keep time in Biff for well over a year at that point. Maybe he didn't like the kind of attention the band was drawing to him. He likely saw it as a waste of time and longed to spend his days on more serious musical matters. Considering what he did next, I can only assume he had been harboring ill will for some time. Not necessarily against Ray or myself, but for the enterprise itself that was Biff and our music as a whole. Drumsticks weren't the only thing Max held in his grip as he approached the stage that evening to begrudgingly fulfill his dutiful obligation to his friends, but also a roll of duct tape and a large paper banner. Like an agent provocateur, or in the spirit of a coup d'etat, from the kick drum, Max proudly hung his ample placard, shown black and bold for all to see. Biff sucks. I quit. And I wondered, is this a joke? I, for one, didn't know for sure, and I can only guess what the audience might have assumed. Regardless, this was, indeed, the last time Cornelius Maximus Hansen played drums on stage with the likes of Biff. By the way, and in honor of his homeland, I suppose, he had shown up to this gig in full cowboy gear, boots, Stetson, and all. Halloween was still a good 6 months away, but his costume, which included a pair of dark shades and a red bandana pulled over his nose, served well to cover up most, if not all, of his shame. You didn't think he'd gotten over his Biff abashment, did you? Not even. With a brief introduction, our first notes exploded into the space. Several dozen interested peers filled in the area in front of the stage, just as excited to rock out as us. I twisted the volume knob on my guitar as I glanced at Ella over in the corner. As always, she would be there to fuel me and my animalistic performance. Molly was with her too. Whoop-de-fucking-do! Other rambunctious types jumped and danced as they screamed and yelled in approval of us. But they didn't mosh. That's an important distinction, as we know. Still, movement and energy. Our music was again moving people. A great feeling, as usual. I wore a plain white tee with the word dumbass permanent in Sharpie across the middle, all in the name of my proud comedic identity. I put everything I had into this performance, just as I had done before the first time we stepped onto that stage and every time since, embracing all that our music represents to me, completely at that moment. I assumed that would help others believe in what we were doing as well. The set unfolded as well or better than I'd hoped, and thank God no more antics from Cornelius Maximus Hansen. As we launched our final tune, the infamous Screaming Song, a disheveled mass of barbaric curls and denim cutoffs and a multicolored velvet coat bounded into my peripheral. It was Elliot. From the Moron Men, of course. And this wasn't the first time he joined us on this particular tune to slosh around his brain, whiplash his neck, and shred his vocal cords to back up Ray with the sustained and repetitive shrieks that spread over each measure of the chorus. The song, as always, reached its abrupt ending in an explosion of incomprehensible guitar notes and drum rolls. Once again, lost in the momentum of trying to rip the strings off my guitar, I almost forgot Ray had epic plans to massacre his P-bass in a manner most befitting rock and roll. Ray's grandmother had recently croaked, and he was able to get his tobacco-yellow hands on a small portion of his inheritance, which he then used to purchase a new 5-string Fender, effectively rendering his old P-bass expendable. As if a bomb were about to detonate, I instinctively jumped off stage and waved my arms to clear a path as I frantically urged people to get out of the way. In one fluid motion, Ray unplugged and unshouldered his axe and repeatedly sledgehammered it on the solid ground before us. Swing after swing after swing. He looked like some crazed lumberjack trying to kill a thieving varmint cornered in some icy log cabin. As small chunks of the basswood bounced off the bodies of nearby spectators, adrenaline carried him through to some satisfying level of destruction. 8 of the manliest slams Ray could muster, and the damn thing still wouldn't bust open quite as we had expected. And I wonder, did Nirvana ever have so much trouble smashing any of their guitars? The excitement of the moment was expressed in a combination of cheers, laughs, and astonished faces. I raced over to greet Ray with an enthusiastic double high-five to celebrate his rock star feat. Max sloppily knocked over at least half of my drum set on his way to grab my microphone. His booming chants then filled the room.
Biff sucks! Biff sucks! Biff sucks!
And naturally, the whole crowd joined in. Then he added one more key phrase he'd already expressed in text.
I quit! Biff sucks! I quit! Biff sucks! I quit! Biff sucks! I quit!
He dropped the mic, flipped me off, and bounced off the stage. And let me tell you, that was a serious bird. He meant it with a vengeance. I didn't see him again for the rest of the night. 15 minutes later. Please say thank you played after us. And yes, they were amazing. Of course. Please allow me just a few more lines to swoon over Ella. She was wearing the same Smashing Pumpkin shirt I first saw her donning that glorious day I discovered she existed. I had seen her wear it several times since, of course, and every time I did, it had the same effect on me. It was as if that t-shirt had the power to flood me with the entirety of the emotional ramifications of everything that occurred in my life since that day I first saw it on her. It was the object that had started it all. It triggered an odd mix of gratitude and despair. I loved it, and I wanted to despise it as well. The love, of course, always won. This show will always live in my heart and remain vivid in my mind because of what Tina said before their last song. Okay, guys, well, I guess this is it. This is our last song, and maybe this is our last show? At least for now, and maybe forever. The crowd expressed the letdown this news brought. I would later learn Tina was moving out of state for college, as was her boyfriend, their drummer, and so they were forced to call it quits, or at least an indefinite hiatus. Spencer and the cloned Dodo crew shared a similar confession towards the end of their set as well. I was glad it didn't sound like they were breaking up, though, but only moving an hour north to attend college at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. Dennis had insisted on his moron men playing last, and now I can see why. They took the stage, and I knew we were all in big trouble the instant he announced the title of their first song.
Hey, all you assholes and fuckers! We're the fuck morons! And this first one's called Fuck You Pigs! We're gonna mosh!
I don't know what they were thinking, but if they wanted to play more than a one-song set, they probably should have saved that one for last. I assumed Dennis couldn't help himself. Knowing him, he probably couldn't delay his gratification any further. I got to hand it to them, though. They had come up with a new flagship song most perfect for moshing, or starting a riot. Heavy and frantic, complete with what I'm sure many felt were some pretty righteous, authority-challenging lyrics. Damn the man. What more do you need? The room erupted in an epic mosh pit that would rival any professional concert I'd ever seen. I took Molly's hand, and she took Ella's, and we all retreated to the back of the room to watch the carnage unfold. The 2 cops were powerless, and I'm sure they called for backup immediately. I expected the house lights would be coming on any second, but they did not. I looked over to the south wall and was shocked to see Mayor Jerry frantically tearing off layer upon layer of duct tape off the bank of switches. Apparently, Dennis and his minions had anticipated this would be his first move to stop the show and had sabotaged accordingly. I estimate only 20 more seconds passed before he broke through this silvery barrier. The blinding house lights filled the room. The brightness definitely slowed a lot of people down, and Soundman Randy then literally pulled the plug on the PA, but the band kept playing despite their sudden loss of microphones. Jerry then hustled to the other side of the room. I realized he was heading straight for the breaker box. There, he found another wall of duct tape to deal with, but got it torn open soon enough. He studied it for a few seconds before flipping a particular switch that cut the power to the stage. This action further stripped them of their musical power. They kept playing, though, regardless of the fact that all the audience could hear were Elliot's drums over Dennis's unamplified screams. It was inspiring in a punk rock kind of way. They were standing up for freedom. They were not going to be silenced. And I suppose that's why at least a third of the kids kept moshing. Within about a minute, 5 more officers ran in. 2 of them, for whatever reason, knew exactly what to do. They got up on stage, took out their batons, and let's just say used proximity to persuade Elliot to stop playing his drums. This was surprisingly effective. They instructed him to stand up, and he obeyed. This was probably enough to quell the chaos, but then 10 more officers came charging in, and a lot of the kids immediately went running out. It was over. I had never seen so many cops in one room before. I'll go for the cheap joke here and say it looked like freebie day at Dunkin'. This, I assumed, had to be the entirety of the Parkland police force, back at the Superdome. I wandered around with a perpetual feeling like I was staring at the sun no matter where I looked. It had been a while since we saw the full glory of every harsh light blazed up in the place. I shouldn't be surprised, I told myself over and over. I guess this ended up being a soothing mantra of sorts. Off to my right, some minor carnage. A young mosh pit participant was bleeding from his eyebrow. Blue and red lights soon lit his path to the ER for stitches. Ella and Tina were talking with some other girls over in the far corner of the room, including Molly. Spencer and crew were scrambling to get their gear loaded out, and in front of me, a red-faced Jerry Cassiano had a smug-looking Dennis Hernandez cornered. The mayor was in the middle of delivering a passionate lecture. I cautiously approached, hesitant with trepidation, but unbearably curious to know exactly what was being said. Though, trust me, I already had a good guess. As if he sensed me coming, Jerry turned around, stopping in mid-sentence, and waved me over as he called my name. His voice, loud and stern, rattled me.
James, I'm sorry to inform you, we are not doing any more of these concerts, and you have your friend, Mr. Hernandez, here to thank for that. Dennis, do you have anything to say for yourself?
He just shrugged.
Sorry, bro, I guess.
He sniffed hard, sucking in the air and flexing his bull ring.
I guess I got tired of following King Jerry's rules,
he said. I don't think Jerry's eyes could have gotten any wider. Have you ever seen one of those cartoons where the guy's face turns red and steam comes out of his ears? He came unglued.
It's basic safety, Dennis! He shouted. We are sticking our necks out for you and your friends. We are the liable adults. So yes, there have been rules from the beginning.
Yeah, and I follow them at every show we've played. And tonight,
you decided that considerations for safety weren't important anymore or somehow didn't apply to you, and now at least 2 of your peers are injured.
I stared at Dennis, studying his face and reactions. I would forever be trying to understand how he could hold your gaze with his cold eyes no matter how intense the confrontation or how much shame someone attempted to blast him with. He just stared back at Jerry. He didn't so much as flinch. And I wonder, yet again, where did he get the nerve? I think all this action warrants a quick recap. Max quit Biff. Please Say Thank You was as good as broken up. Cloned Dodo planned to move away. And Mayor Jerry had pulled the plug on the town's sponsorship of our concerts. Oh, and how could I forget? Earlier that week, Seamus dropped a bomb on us too. Our very smart, and often very drunk, friend and bass player had more than enough credits to graduate high school a whole year early, and his parents had officially agreed to let him return to Texas to claim his head start at UT in Austin. And lastly, 2 out of 3 moron men were also college-bound. Not Dennis, of course. So, there was no telling what was next for them either. The only good news I'd gotten that week, as we know, was my horrible girlfriend, Molly, wasn't carrying my unborn child. Wait. Shit. A heavy realization hit me while I carried my amp out to the truck. Both of my bands are now defunct. Well, basically. I am bandless. What am I going to do now? Luckily, I didn't have time to dwell on or process this, though. You'll never guess who then walked up behind me and interrupted my musings. As usual, I could feel her presence, her aura, her energy. Before I even saw her, there she was. Ella, sweet, sweet, beautiful Ella, in her gorgeous Gish shirt. I had gotten distracted and busy since all the chaos ensued. The concerned look in her eyes told me a check-in between us was somewhat overdue. Hey, Molly wanted me to tell you she got tired of waiting. She just left. She said to tell you to call her later if you want. Okay. Thanks, I said. Shit, and damn, I'm gonna get it later, I thought for a second before getting completely sucked into Ella's beauty and feminine sexual aura. I'm sorry Dennis did that, she said. Sometimes he just doesn't think, or I guess he just has bad thoughts. That might be more accurate to say. She seemed to be at least slightly weighed down by shame. You don't have to be sorry on his behalf, I said. Then I think I started channeling my inner Mr. Hammond again. I mean, I think what you're trying to say is you just wish he hadn't done that. You regret his behavior. I stopped there, but wanted to add, because you feel somehow responsible for him, because he's your stupid dingus of a boyfriend. Thanks. That's well put, she said, relief spreading across her face. We spent the better part of 5 minutes sharing praise for each other's performances and regret over the changing status of our respective bands. Then we speculated over whether or not Max had really quit Biff, though I was quite certain he had. So, I'm a bass player without a band, and you're a guitarist without a drummer, she said. I froze. My eyes doubled in size. My heart pounded. Adrenaline pumped as I realized that, yes, I'm a guitarist without a drummer. And I'm also a drummer without a bass player. Seamus is moving back to Texas for college a year early. He leaves next week. You could say some variety of surprised confusion then became her face, not just because of what I had said, but how I said it. I mean, you could join Elysium. Will you join Elysium? Please? Chapter 30. The chapter where I start a new band with a much revered friend and discover I've bitten off more than is chewable. 1 week later. May 11th, 1996. Hairbrush, toothbrush, Colgate, tweezers, Old Spice. I breathed deeply and stared at myself in our bathroom mirror. She will be here soon, you drummer stud, you. Oh yeah. She is coming here to play with you because she likes you, because she wants you, because she thinks you are so damn amazingly good. You are surely the drummer of her dreams. Her most sexy dreams, that is. Ugh. Sorry. I think you get the point. I was excited for my new band starting that day and ecstatic over our new bass player. I quaked with excitement as I reapplied my deodorant stick.
Okay, Biff. Settle the fuck down. Time to go out to the shack to get warmed up.
Right. Wow. Thanks, Beauregard. I only briefly mentioned our new music space before. My dad's old tool shed he begrudgingly cleared out for us to practice in after Ray left Elysium. Over that first year, we slowly spruced it up a bit by adding some old rugs. Dad later slapped up some insulation and drywall, and one of his electrician friends owed a favor, so soon enough it had power. After that, we had lights, outlets, an electric heater in the winter, and no less than 3 box fans blasting the hot summer air through the rest of the year. The 12 by 12 space would forever hold on to that gassy lawnmower smell. I became extra aware of it that day. I placed it all under new sharp scrutiny as I imagined it through our new bass player's eyes. Anyway, I was about to head out to said music shack when the phone rang. Hello?
Hey, I'm about to go pick her up. Are you sure you can handle this, Biff?
Max, of course. I had to at least pretend I had no idea what he was referring to, so my voice naturally shot up into a defensive frequency. Handle what?
Come on! Can you really handle being in a band with her? Her?
Yes, why couldn't I handle it?
Well, are you over her? I don't think you're over her. Like, not at all.
Yes, Max, it's fine.
No, it's fucked. You're fucked. She did something to you, and she does it to you every time you see her, and I'm not sure you're ever going to be able to perform with her right there watching.
Don't be ridiculous.
No, I reserve the right to be as fucking ridiculous as I want, because I've seen what can happen to you, Biff.
I squeezed the phone hard enough to hear the plastic crack.
So, for real, let me ask you again, and don't even answer right now, but think about this. Can you handle being in a band with your unicorn, the fabled creature, the girl you've had the most pathetically enduring crush on the world has ever seen? You want to talk about fucking ridiculous?
I knew any further arguing would be pointless, so I just said, "Okay, I'll think about it."
Good,
he replied.
See you in an hour.
Slam. 5 seconds later, I realized I was holding my breath. My brain spurred me to suck in air. I hung up the phone. 1 hour, I said to no one. 1 hour later, the moment had finally arrived. I sat at my cramped drum set, sticks in hand, already sweating and ready to rock. Or so I hoped. As usual, to my right, Max Hansen leaned in at the ready with his guitar in his grip and microphone near his lips. Nothing new there. But to my left stood nothing short of a mind-blowing revelation. Bathed in the harsh glow of our fluorescent tubes above was a gorgeous, long-haired young woman wearing a vintage tobacco burst Fender Mustang bass. Wearing it very, very well. Are you ready for this? Go ahead and shout it out with me now. Ella, Ella, Ella. Please take a moment to savor this with me as we revel in the grandeur, the glory, and the triumph of this moment. You know what this meant to me. I was starting a band with none other than Ella Levinsky, the famed grunge girl herself. A dream come true. And I wondered, yet again, was I dreaming? Better be sure. Someone else pinch me, please, with some kind of fucking power tool. And I wondered, what would happen next? Now that we were there. There she was, Ella, standing 2 feet away from my drum set, in our humble musical abode, and I, marveling, with much reverence, listening, anticipating, waiting to take in anything and everything she might possibly say. I think we should definitely keep playing Waiting to Burn, she said as she tuned up her Mustang. That Mustang. That beautiful, beautiful bass. I've always really loved that one. Plus, I already know how to play it, she said with a melodious voice and a smile I wanted to devour. No wonder Dennis was always trying to suck it off her face. Yeah, for sure, I said. Then Max had a qualifier to add.
Sure, we can play that, and a few of our best Elysium songs, I guess, just to get us started. But I really want to think of this as a whole new thing, with a new name too.
Ella's smile morphed to a more serious look. Oh, okay, sure.
And you know you've got to do some backup vocals for us too. We're counting on you for that. Stella Ella's just gotta sing.
She laughed and agreed and gave me a knowing glance. Then a wink. She winked at me. I wasn't sure if a girl had ever winked at me before. I guess not, because I realized how a girl's simple wink, a seemingly inconsequential closing and reopening of one eyelid, could be so powerful. Did she somehow put a spell on me? When did I miss her incantations? How else can you explain why I felt my heart slamming against my chest for at least 5 or 6 beats? A flood of dopamine, I suppose? Adrenaline and cortisol, perhaps? Then it hit me. Max's question. Maybe it was meant to be more of a warning. Oh shit. I was in trouble. I definitely wasn't ready for this. This was a whole new level of raging desire. Holy shit, I thought. We haven't even started playing yet. And there I was, already on the brink of losing my mind. About to lose control. I wanted to bear hug her and never let go, to smash myself into her, to blur the atoms between us, to become one in our singularity. The music. I like to think some part of me knew I needed to figure out a way to direct this passion for her into the music, and fast. But how was I going to do that? I couldn't take my eyes off her. It was fucking ridiculous. Her hotness was, shall we say, extra overwhelming. She had a new glow to her or something. Exquisite beauty emanated from her, like an aura that filled the room completely. I could feel myself becoming blissfully zoned out, swimming, bathing, or otherwise soaking in her warm energy of feminine grace. She was a sorceress of it. A sorceress clad in a black super unknown shirt, above a tight pair of very lucky blue jean shorts. I had never seen her in shorts before, but it made sense she wore them, because it was unseasonably hot for May, and I was glad she did, because it was pretty hot in the shed, and she was so hot in them. And they were short! This was the first time I truly appreciated just how athletic her perfect body was, and she could definitely beat me in a foot race. Just as soon as she removed her chain cheetah print wallet that I will always and forever find really sexy. Plus, I could smell her hair from my drum set. I'm not going to lie, and I must admit, I deliberately positioned one of our box fans in such a way to maximize the chances of her glorious molecular essence drifting my way. That's how I liked it. But no, that's my point. I was in big trouble here. Remember? Luckily, Max started in with the Waiting to Burn song, and my body shifted into some kind of inexplicable muscle memory mode, and I just played the music. Over the next hour, several classic Elysium songs filled the air of our music shack once more. They sounded great. Better than ever, in fact. Ella picked up on everything with complete grace, speed, and ease. Then we jammed out some new riffs, and they were awesome. She demonstrated her incredible sensibilities on the bass. Spot on. She knew the best notes to place with everything Max offered on his end. And in every song, you'd better believe, I felt her bass. Got lost in it immediately. That sweet low end, in sync and completely complementary to my pounding right foot. Me and Ella, we, the rhythm section, mingling our musical energy, our separate sounds mixed on similar frequencies. It was like we were making love. In a way. And I wondered, is it possible I just fell in love with her even more? Oh God, I wanted her so bad. It felt as if the energy of my unfulfilled desire was literally going to tear my atoms apart. That can't happen, right? She had to be mine. If anything means anything in this life, in this universe, then this must be our destiny, our truth. It had to be. Pardon the cliche, but it felt like wild horses couldn't, whatever. That was about the moment that Beauregard piped in with a sobering reminder.
Hey, Biff, pump the brakes. Aren't you forgetting something? What about Molly? Your fucking girlfriend, remember?
Indeed, Beauregard, as you know. I was still with Molly Masterson, and Dennis Hernandez, of course, was still with my beloved Ella. Nevertheless, we had just started this new band, and we were good. So good. I knew there was already no turning back. From day one I've described here, it all clicked. It was going to work really well. And we already had 2 new songs in development. Not to mention, we had a blast, and it flew by really fast, and I froze as Ella unshouldered her bass, as she slid her arm beneath her breathtaking brunette locks and whipped them around as a powerful waft of her shampooed scent sailed my way. She smiled. Well, this was awesome, guys. Hells yeah, Max replied while extending his arms to solicit a double high five from her. She obliged his nonverbal request. Then he repeated his gesture of camaraderie with me. Without thinking, I reached my hands out to Ella to complete the circle, I guess. With a tiny smack, our 4 hands touched, our eyes locked, and we shared more smiles. Fuck. I was in really big trouble. My mind jumped back to the moment when I carried her amp through the cramped doorway of her family's townhouse, when I accidentally got this close to her and freaked out and ran away. That was the nexus, the moment that started us down this path we were on, the one that determined the kind of relationship we would have, the moment of weakness when my body betrayed me, when I couldn't speak to ask what would have been the most important question I'd ever ask anyone. Would you like to get some coffee with me and talk about music? Or perhaps, would you like to come over again and jam sometime soon? Well, here she was, over to jam again. Yet so much had changed. The context was different now. But regret, more than ever, was still the current reality. My new bandmates picked up their cased guitars and readied to leave. Same time next week? Ella asked. Same bat time, same bat channel, Max said. Right, I said as I caught Ella's eye. Oh, what delicious eye contact. Short, brief, fleeting, but deep, with such power to set my neurochemistry ablaze. Okay, well, bye, James, she said with the cutest little shrug and smile, and I could sense she wanted to pause and linger in that space of connection between us. I waved, and she waved as she disappeared out the door. I looked out the window and watched her walk away, Let's be honest. I was staring at her walking away. Then she happened to glance back and caught my gaze. I froze as a blast of shame slammed me, of course, but she swiftly swept it away with another smile and sheepish wave. And I ached for her, and in my aching, I quaked. That's right, I ached, and I quaked for her. Then I walked to my hatchback and drove to the barber shop. 25 minutes later. Snip. I stared at my red face in the mirror as Floyd the barber did his work. Just kidding. The barber's name was Tony, I think. But we'll call him Floyd, just for fun. Snip. My eyes were red because I had been crying and screaming for the last 20 minutes as I drove there. To Cuts R Us, Parkland's one and only barbershop. Classic. What was I screaming? I guess you could call them affirmations of sorts. Ella Levinsky is not your girlfriend. Ella Levinsky will never be your girlfriend. You have a girlfriend. Your girlfriend's name is Molly. You need to love Molly. You have to let Ella go if you're ever going to play in a band with her. Snip. And now what was I doing? I knew what I was doing, but I might not have been totally sure why. I was committing hair suicide, an impulsive decision. Snip, snip. Maybe it was like some kind of a ritual, or maybe a sacrifice. After this first practice with our new band, I fully realized Max was right. He was right to warn me. He was right to question me. He was right to worry about my ability to handle being in a band with my beloved unicorn, Ella Levinsky. Snip, snip, snip. As Floyd snipped away, I continued with my affirmations, now just silently within. I have to accept this. I have to accept this. I have to accept this. I knew I had to accept that Ella was not and would not be my girlfriend if I was ever going to play in this band with her. If I didn't, then I had just set myself up to suffer horribly and die many flaming deaths of unrequited passion, over and over, week after miserable week. The question then came to clarity for me. How does one release desire? Such powerful desire. How could I let Ella go? See her as just a friend. Her dating someone else hadn't helped. My dating someone else hadn't helped either. Not much, at least. Snip, snip, buzz. As I felt my hair fall on my shoulders and slide down the black gown around me, I imagined Ella talking to me in her most soothing voice. It's okay, James. I need you to make this okay for us. I know you can do it. I believe in you. We can just be friends, for now. I need you to just be my friend and my bandmate. Think of what Fleetwood Mac taught us. Bandmates should not date. You can let me go. For the good of the band. Yes, for the good of the band. This became my latest affirmation. It did resonate. Mr. Hammond taught us that affirmations are like truths we are claiming. We can make things true for ourselves when we affirm them over and over. We can decide that something is true for us and reinforce it again and again until we feel it, or until it integrates, like when our brain fully accepts it. Mind, body, and spirit, perhaps. I didn't want this to be my truth. That may have been a barrier, but what I wanted was beside the point. I can let her go for now, for the good of the band, I whispered to myself. Then out of nowhere, a giant wave of emotion crested up. My face tensed and a tear escaped. I quickly reached up out of my gown and wiped it away. I don't think Floyd noticed. Snip, snip, snip. With each piece of hair removed, I breathed and imagined I was letting go of the energy, I guess, that was bound up within me. I was both literally and symbolically embracing change and letting go of the past. I guess that's what I needed. I suppose that's why I did this. That's why I might consider this a ritual, for what it represented. Whatever. I guess I looked pretty good. I hadn't seen my ears in almost 3 years. At least my dad would be pleased. Would Molly Masterson like it? Who cares? I was definitely way more concerned about what Ella Levinsky would think. Shit. At least now I could say my hair was shorter than my girlfriend's. Chapter 31. The chapter where my new band with Ella Levinsky plays our first show, and my horrible girlfriend decides to take our relationship in a new direction. 111 days later. August 31st, 1996. Max shot me a pained grimace. Like a couple of movers relocating a couch, we maneuvered Ella's refrigerator-sized base cabinet down a steep flight of narrow stairs. The threat of tripping loomed as we descended into the dungeon-esque basement of the hip music-hosting downtown Denver coffee shop, Eleanor Blues. Good a place as any for a first gig, I suppose. Where else could we possibly play our music now that the mayor had put the kibosh in the Parkland shows? No bars would have us underage rockers. At least not without some kind of pain-in-the-ass work permits. At least it wasn't another freezing fucking barn. Eleanor's basement was super cramped, so the tiny crowd that slowly assembled felt ample in context. Any respectable fire marshal would, sure as shit, surely shit a brick. The summer had flown by as our new band developed quite nicely. Like a dream, in fact. You won't be surprised to hear my leading theory on why we had been so progressive in our development. Ella Levinsky, and her easygoing agreeableness, of course. Plus her affability. The loveliest congeniality I'd ever known, all from one person. Soft and feminine in her demeanor, go with the flow on all issues we came across. An absolute sweetheart, a total angel, a dream come true of a bandmate. And not to mention, a complete departure from Mac's control freak Hansen contrarian extraordinaire. I should have known, however, that in the coming weeks and months, none of these facts would prevent me from stressing over any tinge of discomfort I perceived from her experience as the band developed over the rest of that summer. I would therefore typically prompt her to process any feelings she may have been quietly harboring just as soon as we were alone together. Regardless of this, like I said, it was all like a dream. All the while, the nightmare that was my relationship with Molly Masterson raged on. But I tried, as usual, not to think about that whenever I could be otherwise distracted. Like when I was trying to move heavy band equipment. "You got it there, Biff?" Max said as we reached the end of the staircase with our precarious load. "Don't let me down!" I don't know. I tend to be a real fuck-up. My name is Biff, after all, as you know." This kind of sarcastic response to his distrustful disrespect was my new go-to defense. We set down the speaker near the stage area and continued to survey the situation. Talk about underground music. It felt like we were a 3-person flash mob or a small tribe of musical ninjas randomly assembling in a secret place to commit a clandestine act of rock and vanish again into the night without a trace. We played with a band called Trash Can Fetus. They were a real class act. A lot of the details of the show are very blurry to me now, but I do remember the energy born that night. The enthralling energies of a telescope time machine show. Yes, telescope time machine. our new entitlement we had eventually agreed upon after much deliberation. We had at least a top 10 list of runners-up. I voted for this one because it was an Ella submission. She got it from a Carl Sagan quote. I also liked the idea of having an astronomy-related band name. At least it wasn't another Nirvana ripoff. The stage, to speak of at Eleanor's, required you to use your imagination. The three of us assembled our gear on the grease-sodden rug in the far corner of the concrete room as our crowd filled in around us. It reminded me of Ray's childhood security blanket. Speaking of friends, as I twisted the lugs on my snare drum, I felt energized to see Angry Ben and Tall Thomas, a goth kid, and Spike, a 200-pound buzz-headed chick. Don't worry about remembering any of them, just some of our usual suspects, our typical patrons. Oh, and Raymond Joseph Duran was there too. "Break a leg, Biff," he called to me. Dennis Hernandez made sure his ass attended to, front and center no less, and kept trying to stand way too close to Ella, in my estimation. I glared at him. He was back to his original misfit outfit, by the way, the classic punk rock leathers and long underwear. Give her some space, punk. You don't fucking own her. Also arriving was my other half, as they say, Molly. She came squeaking down the moaning stairs and charged up to my drum set like a bull. My drums were red, by the way. And oh boy, she already looks pissed, I realized in worry. What the fuck? They told me that I wasn't on the guest list. This was the first thing out of her mouth as she approached. Molly, in fact, was responsible for us having this gig in the first place. That same day I got the dramatic haircut, she had called me from this coffee shop. She had met up there with her aunt, who apparently knew the owners. She went on at length about how much she loved the place as I tried to stay focused. Then my brain perked up when she informed me that they host live music in their basement. You guys should play here. And yes, indeed, we could. We would. Thanks, Molly. Yeah, shit. I really should have gotten her on the guest list. I see that now. Sorry, babe. We only got 3 people and Max basically needed all of them, I explained as I squeezed my drumsticks. Fine, so as usual, Max or other people are more important to you than your fucking girlfriend, huh? Ouch. As usual. Ouch. The cover's only $2. Yeah, I know. That's besides the point. I mean, I'll pay for you, or I'll pay you back. Forget it. Sorry. Have a good show. Yes. In case you didn't quite pick up on that, there was a hint of maleficent sarcasm in her voice. Her eyes darted around as she faded back from the stage area while offering a sheepish wave to Ella. Molly had been a front-row fixture at every one of my gigs since the frozen barn where we officially met, and this fact said more about her loyalty than her fandom. It was obvious to me that she didn't like Biff's music, and she didn't get Elysium. I wasn't holding out much hope for her becoming a Telescope Time Machine fan either. I continued to tune the lugs on my drum and try to put Molly out of my mind. Not as easy when she's 20 feet away staring daggers at you, but I realized I was getting good at managing or tolerating or just not caring as much when she was mad at me. I guess I'd had a lot of practice lately. I had a sense that her mood would have been as sour as a kumquat whether I'd gotten her on the guest list or not. From day one, when I informed her of this new band we were forming, she had armored up with an endless supply of shitty comments she used to jab at me in her passive-aggressive way. Any guesses why? Yeah. Fair to say, my life, at least the portion of it with Molly, had steadily become a living hell ever since Dennis made her painfully aware of my history of crush on her friend Ella. "Oh boy, I bet you're really gonna love being in a band with Ella," she had said. "I hope you can still play well with Ella being so distracting to you." And my response? Just crickets, as I burned with some horrific mix of anger and shame. I can look back now with much more compassion for Molly's struggles with insecurity and jealousy. Plus, as we'll continue to see, she was absolutely right. Anyway, I struggled to breathe the thick, smoke-filled air as we performed a self-check of our sound. This didn't help the general claustrophobic sense that we were, in fact, all going to die down there before the night was through. Still, the room was alive with chatter. Max summoned his typical electrifying showmanship as he skillfully filled the space with his guitar's warm feedback, choked by a rapidly rotating tremolo. He then brought it back down for a contrasting effect as he spoke.
"Good evening. We are Telescope Time Machine, and you are all about to become Telescope Time Machine fans."
And I wondered, where does he find that confidence? Our opening song, Counterpart, was without a doubt the best piece of music I had ever been part of writing. I find it difficult to describe music in words, and therefore, I must accept defeat here before I even begin my pathetic attempt. I could never do justice to just how heavy and energetic and groovy and just plain fucking awesome this opening song was for us. And heavy. Did I mention heavy? I think it's safe to say the crowd thought so too. And the lyrics. I know it's not true, at all, but I always felt like Max wrote this one for me and Ella. She's my counterpart. There's a perfect connection between us. In my eyes, no one else can satisfy. What do you think? The effect on the audience was exactly what we hoped for. Virtually every attendee began to move, sway, nod, and dance, all swept up in the kinetic energy of our sonic offerings. I would tell you I pounded my drums with a whole new brand of passion, and I did, but hopefully I could come up with a better way to say it than that. But I guess I can't, so there you go. Ella was moving too. Wow. Damn, I thought. Totally overwhelmed. I was about to buzz out of this plane of existence. There's a portion where her bass guitar and my kick drum blend in sort of a dance together. We locked eyes. She slapped her low E in perfect timing with my kicks. She seemed to lose herself in the moment as she closed her eyes and swayed her hips. Then I think I kind of lost myself in her. As we know from the debacle at Buck's, I already severely lacked the discipline it takes to harness and control the energy that flows freely through you when you play the drums. I was just so damn passionate. Actually, passion may be the best word here, and I say this only because the drums are one of the most sexual of all instruments, because you are using your whole body to play them. It was actually Dave Grohl from Nirvana who put that idea in my head from a recent article I had found. I had also read in one of those Hammond-recommended psychology books that sexual energy is basically the same as creative energy. I guess in some ways that's pretty obvious. I was using my whole body to create music, and I was doing it with Ella. And everyone was watching. And I wondered, was this the newest, best moment of my life? Absolutely. Fuck. It was just as Molly may have feared. Ella was fantastically distracting in my left peripheral, but that wasn't all. That wasn't even the half of it. I wasn't just looking at Ella every chance I got. I was feeling her deeply. No longer was I just displaying my musical passions for her, I was blending them with her own in a sublime synergy. Sublime. Whipping her hair, moving her hips, more lively and impassioned than I'd ever seen her before, with such powerful femininity and sexual energy. At least that's how I interpreted it. She was really rocking it. Telescope time machine, it would seem, was prompting a whole new level of something in her as well. I'd never seen her so alive. My God, I loved it. Perhaps it was a new depth of excitement for our music, previously unknown, that was born this night as our amazing new lineup found its space. Our first song ended. I breathed in the roar of praise from our friends. Then I glanced at Molly. She wore a frown, and I wasn't sure if I had ever seen that particular variety of sour look on her face. A sort of angry frown? In my brief assessment, I recall she appeared indignant. I think I've used that word before. What does that mean again? Let's see. A feeling characterized by or expressing a strong displeasure at something considered unjust, offensive, insulting, or base. Yes. Perfect. We tore through our second song and rushed into our third. By the conclusion of the fifth, I remembered to look around for an overdue visual check-in with Molly. She had faded to the back of the crowd, with her arms seemingly stuck in the folded position. Claps withheld. Propensely. Just looking away, as if the ceiling had something more interesting to offer. Our sixth, seventh, and final song passed with grand, flawless fun as I continued to meld my mind, body, and percussive energy with Ella's every note. She was clearly having a blast, and likewise reeling from the rush. "Thanks, Telescope Time Machine fans," Max said. Telescope Time Machine, gig number 1, success. The crowd all gave us the best 30 people in a basement could possibly give in the way of affirmation for our performance. I felt it. The joy of feeling thoroughly sullied as soon as I stood and glanced at the stairs. Molly had already squeaked halfway up. 10 minutes later. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe I have some kind of psychological tic, or just good manners. But whenever my band's performance is done, I like to get the hell off the stage ASAP. Usually, I do so feverishly, which is a perfect word to describe the energy fueling my exit from the stage area on this night. Feverishly. Among a barrage of congratulatory comments from my friends, and dare I say, fans. Busy and distracted as I was, concerning thoughts of Molly, or thoughts of concern for her, played on repeat in the back of my mind. I wanted to get my ass upstairs to see if she was all right. Was she still pissed about the guest list thing? I feared it was more than that. I knew it was more than that. But still, what the fuck? The enticing aromas of roasted coffee punched my nose as I raced up the rickety stairs. I found her alone, dominating one of the rickety tables at the front of the shop. My legs felt rickety as I approached. Rickety. It was dim and quiet, save for the bustling sounds below. She was the only one in the room, save the barista at the back, seething and seething in an eerie calm. Trepidation slowed my steps. I realized she hadn't noticed me yet, and my good old fight-or-flight system urged me to turn around and retreat. She still wore that same indignant frown as she scribbled away on some water-spotted page of frayed spiral notebook paper. At some point during our performance, a storm blew in, and judging by her wet dog look, she had dashed out in the rain to retrieve the notebook from her car. She obviously had something very important to write. But what? And so fiercely, and with such force. No shit. It wasn't good. The table was shaking, clamoring against the hardwood floor in protest of her rhythmic pressings upon it. Rickety. So rickety. I feel terrible saying this, but she looked horrible, like a soaked mess, and I could feel her angry energy radiating. It filled the room. It occupied the space. Her humidity was on the rise. I wouldn't be surprised if her wet skin began steaming. My brain was ever ready with its standard response. Guilt, with a capital fucking G. Like the nice guy I am, I assumed I was responsible for wherever she was currently residing on the wheel of emotions. Hey, I said. She didn't look up at me, but just raised her index finger to convey the universal sign for wait, or hold on a minute. But I tell you, it had a viciousness to it. The most pointed pointer finger you could imagine. She might as well have shown me her middle one. She continued to write as her frown deepened, more pronounced as if it had gotten stuck that way. Her ongoing impact on the poor table was so loud you could hear it over the ruckus below. She was, quaking with rage? Pretty much, and pouring it onto that poor tattered page of college ruled. I swallowed hard. Maybe because she was pressing hard, really hard. All caps, no less. What are you writing? I dared ask. She breathed in deeply, sucking air like a goddamn vacuum cleaner, as if she were pulling up her sharpest, bitchiest, most sarcastic tone. Pretty much. Oh, nothing. Just a little note that explains why I hate you, why you're an asshole bastard, and why I never want to see you again. I froze.